I don't want his damp little shrine to dead fish. Aaron said it in Helen's kitchen 43 minutes after they came home from Martin's funeral. The church ladies were still arranging sliced ham on the dining room table. Somebody's coffee maker hissed beside Helen's toaster, and Martin's attorney, Warren Keeley, stood with his black overcoat folded over one arm, looking as if he wished he had waited until Monday. He had only said that Martin wanted Aaron to have first choice of the fishing cottage. Not ownership, not an obligation. First choice. Aaron gave one hard laugh and set down her paper cup. Coffee jumped over the rim and spotted the sympathy card beneath it. "Sell it," she said. "Sell the boat too, if the thing still floats." Helen stared at her daughter's hand. Aaron wore no nail polish because the hospital's policy discouraged it, and there was a pale groove around her ring finger where her wedding band had been until 2 months ago. "Martin thought you might want," Warren began. "He thought wrong." The room seemed to lean toward Helen, waiting for her to defend the dead man. She could not think of anything to say that would not make one of them a liar. Aaron looked at her then. "Mom, you don't need another place to take care of." Another place, as though Martin had left behind a dog that bit. From the dining room came the soft clatter of serving spoons and a woman whispering, "Is this the horseradish one?" Warren cleared his throat. "There's no hurry. I only mentioned it because Martin was specific." "Of course he was," Aaron said. That was the part Helen could not stop hearing. Not the refusal, not even the contempt in it. Of course he was. Warren left soon afterward, carrying a ham sandwich wrapped in a napkin because Helen insisted, although she could not remember insisting. People kept touching her forearm. They told her the service had been beautiful, which was a strange thing to say about a service Martin would have hated. He had disliked organ music, neckties, lilies, and any sentence containing the phrase celebration of life. At 71, he had been buried in all four. By 4 o'clock, the house smelled of coffee, wet wool, and casseroles warming at different temperatures. Helen moved through it with a trash bag, collecting cups that still had an inch left in them. She had spent 4 years carrying half-finished things away from Martin. Water glasses, bowls of oatmeal gone gummy, pills he claimed had fallen under his chair by accident. Near the front window, 2 of his former co-workers were telling each other the same story about a forklift and a frozen loading dock. Every time one of them said, "Marty," Helen's body expected an answer from the back room. Aaron found her scraping deviled egg filling into the garbage disposal. "Stop cleaning. I'm not cleaning. I'm making room." For what? The other 7 dozen eggs people brought. Aaron reached past her and shut off the disposal. She still wore the black dress she had ordered for her divorce mediation, though Helen was not supposed to know that. "Sit down before you fall down. I've been standing since 1969. That isn't reassuring. It was to me." For half a second, Aaron's mouth almost turned up. Martin had liked provoking that reluctant smile. He called it getting a nickel out of a parking meter. Then Aaron looked toward the doorway, making sure nobody was close enough to hear. "Did he talk to you about the cottage?" Martin talked about gutters. He talked about the price of marine plywood. He talked about a woodpecker that was apparently waging a personal campaign against the north wall. "That's not what I asked." "No?" He didn't tell me he'd spoken to Warren. Aaron folded her arms. Her dark hair, pinned neatly for the funeral, had begun slipping free behind one ear. "Why would he think I wanted it?" Helen wiped yellow filling from the tip of the rubber spatula. "Maybe because you used to go there. I went 3 times. More than 3. Fine. 5. One summer, I got poison ivy in a location. Nobody should ever get poison ivy. You refused to wear long pants. It was 90 degrees. You also sat on a bush. That bush looked friendly." Helen laughed before she could stop herself. The sound came out dry and wrong, like something dragged across a floor. Aaron looked startled, then guilty. Helen hated the guilt more than she hated the brochures Aaron had placed beside the microwave that morning. There were 4 of them, glossy and pale blue. Independent, living with peace of mind. A fresh chapter starts here. One showed a silver-haired woman holding a paintbrush in front of an easel. The woman's blouse had no paint on it. Her white pants had never met a deviled egg. Helen picked up the top brochure. "You brought these today?" "I was going to wait." "Until after the burial?" "Until things calmed down." "Things have been very calm for Martin since Tuesday." "Mom?" Helen returned the brochure to the stack. "How long have you been collecting them?" Aaron pressed her lips together. "That long? I toured one. That's all." "You toured one. It's 12 minutes from my condo. They have transportation, meals if you want them, activities, somebody on site all night, and an easel. What? Never mind. Erin lowered her voice again. She had spent 17 years as a nurse, and when she became worried, she spoke with a maddening gentleness that made everyone else sound unreasonable. You can't stay in this house by yourself. I stayed here by myself every time Martin went to the cottage. That's not the same. No. Back then I had someone to come home and criticize the thermostat. You know what I mean. Helen did. The stairs had become steeper in the last 2 years, especially when she carried laundry. The yard was too much. The bathroom Martin had torn apart during his brief, disastrous burst of energy, the previous spring still had blue painter's tape around the baseboards. There were nights during his final month when Helen had stood in the hallway gripping the wall because the house itself seemed to move beneath her. But Erin did not ask whether Helen was afraid of staying. She had already moved on to where Helen would go. The realtor I used for the condo could give you an estimate, Erin said. Just an estimate. You don't have to agree to anything. You called a realtor? I asked a question. About my house. About what houses in this neighborhood are selling for. You could have asked me, and you would have said, let's not borrow trouble. That is an excellent expression. It's an avoidance strategy. It can be two things. Someone entered the kitchen behind them. Helen turned too quickly and found Linda Carver from across the street holding a foil-covered dish. I put my name on the bottom, Linda said, with the solemnity of a woman reporting a safety measure. It doesn't need to come back soon. Thank you. It's chicken tetrazzini. Even better. It freezes. Best of all. Linda looked between Helen and Erin. Am I interrupting? No, they said together. Linda deposited the dish and retreated. Erin waited until she was gone. See? This is what happens. Everybody brings food for a week. Then they go back to their lives. Should they move in? You make jokes when you don't want to answer. Helen ran warm water over the spatula. Martin had said the same thing, usually after she had asked whether he was breathless, and he had said he was merely appreciating oxygen. Erin touched the counter between them. I'm not trying to boss you around. You're doing it accidentally? I'm trying to think ahead because you won't. I buried my husband this morning. I know. Do you? The question landed harder than Helen intended. Erin's face changed. The sharpness disappeared, leaving exhaustion underneath. She had been with Helen at the hospital when Martin died. She had argued with a pharmacy over a missing prescription. She had washed Helen's hair in the kitchen sink the night before the funeral because Helen could not make herself step into the shower where Martin's plastic stool still waited. Erin looked down at the coffee stain on the sympathy card. I know exactly what day this is, she said. Helen set the clean spatula in the drying rack. Then, let it be this day. Erin nodded once. She picked up the brochures, tapped their edges against the counter, and slid them into her oversized purse. She did not apologize for the cottage. By 6, the house had emptied except for Erin and the food. Helen stood at the front window, while her daughter carried foil pans to the refrigerator in the garage. Erin had kicked off her heels and replaced them with running shoes from her car. The black dress and white shoes made her look like someone fleeing a formal event, which, Helen supposed, she was. Martin's pickup sat behind Erin's sedan. It was a dark green Ford with rust flowering above the rear wheels and a dent in the tailgate from an argument with a boat trailer. Martin had refused to fix the dent because, according to him, it reminded the truck to be humble. Helen could see his work gloves on the dashboard. Tuesday morning, before the ambulance came, he had asked her whether the lake had frozen yet. It was April. The lake had not been frozen for weeks. She had told him that. He frowned, not at her, but at some distance only he could see, then asked whether she had remembered to shut off the pump at the cottage. You shut it off in October, she said. Did I? Yes. He had seemed relieved. That was their final complete conversation. Erin came back inside carrying an empty laundry basket. I put the lasagnas underneath, she said. They'll last longer than the chicken things. Tetrazzinis. There are 3. Grief likes noodles. Erin set the basket beside the stairs. I can stay tonight. You have work tomorrow. I switched. Then you should sleep in your own bed. Erin glanced toward the hallway. Will you? Eventually? I mean sleep. I know what you mean. You can call me at any hour. Helen looked at her daughter's bare ring finger again. Same. Erin bent to hug her. They had never fit neatly together. Erin was taller, and Helen always turned her head the wrong way so their chins bumped. This time, Erin held on longer than usual. At the door, she said, "Promise me you won't drive up there alone." "Up where?" Aaron gave her a look. "I'm not planning anything. You do that thing where you decide something and then pretend it happened to you." "What thing?" "The time you adopted a cat because it followed you into the car. It was raining. You opened the car door and called it. The sequence is not important. Promise." Helen glanced past Aaron at the pickup. "I promise I will not drive to the cottage tonight." Aaron closed her eyes briefly. "That is a lawyer's answer. You should call Warren." "I'm serious, Mom. That place has been closed since October. The road might be washed out. The phone service is terrible, and the nearest emergency room is 40 minutes away. 32. That is not better. I'm not going." Aaron searched her face, apparently decided grief had made her too tired for deception, and kissed her cheek. When the taillights disappeared, Helen locked the door. The silence did not arrive all at once. It collected room by room. The refrigerator hummed, the furnace clicked. A spoon settled inside a casserole dish with a faint metallic sound. Helen walked through the house, turning off lamps other people had switched on. In the bedroom, Martin's reading glasses lay upside down on his nightstand. His slippers were angled toward the bathroom. She picked them up, then put them back exactly where they had been. She sat on the edge of the bed without removing her funeral clothes. For 4 years, every decision had been made around Martin's body. Could he manage the steps? Had he eaten? Was the weather too cold for his lungs? Did that cough sound wet? Had he taken the white pill or only claimed to? Even anger had to wait until after the cardiologist called. Now there was nothing to arrange around. Helen lay down on top of the bedspread and woke at 3:17 with one shoe still on. The house was cold. Somewhere downstairs, Martin's old wind-up clock struck 4 times, having gained 43 minutes because he was no longer there to correct it. Helen rose, removed her dress, and put on jeans, a thermal shirt, and the red wool sweater Martin said made her look like a union organizer. She packed medication, 2 towels, coffee, bottled water, a flashlight, and one of the lasagnas. At the last moment, she added the chicken tetrazzini with Linda's name written on the bottom. By dawn, the pickup was heading north. Helen kept both hands on the wheel because the steering pulled slightly left. Martin's gloves slid back and forth across the dashboard with every curve. She passed wet fields, closed bait shops, and diners whose windows glowed against the gray morning. She did not turn on the radio. She did not call Aaron. At 8:10, she reached the narrow road along the lake. The ruts were deeper than she remembered. Bare branches scraped the passenger side of the truck. When the cottage finally appeared through the trees, Helen's first thought was that Martin had exaggerated every repair he had ever made. The porch sagged. One shutter hung crooked. A dark water stain spread beneath the kitchen eave, and the wooden steps had shifted away from the foundation as if trying to leave. Helen parked beside the cottage and listened to the engine tick itself quiet. On the passenger floor lay Martin's ring of keys, each one marked with a strip of masking tape in his square handwriting. She found the one labeled Lake. "Let's see what was so important," she said. Then she stepped out into the cold. The wind came off the lake hard enough to push open her coat. Helen stood beside the truck, one hand on the door, and looked toward the water. From the road, the lake had been a blue-gray strip between the trees. Here it filled the whole horizon, restless and metallic beneath low clouds. Waves folded over themselves beyond the bluff. Martin had always called that view worth the drive. Helen looked at the sagging porch. The jury is still out. The bottom step shifted under her shoe. She climbed at the far left, where the boards appeared less rotten, and slid the key into the lock. It stuck halfway. Martin's keys had been organized. His locks had not. She shouldered the door while turning the key and nearly fell inside when it gave way. Cold, stale air met her. It smelled of wood smoke, mouse droppings, old coffee, and the mineral dampness of a basement, though the cottage had no basement. 2 mismatched armchairs faced the stone fireplace. A faded plaid blanket lay folded across the couch, exactly where Helen had left it on her last visit 2 years earlier. That visit had lasted 1 night. Martin spent most of it trying to stop a toilet from running. Helen read half a mystery novel while holding a flashlight for him, and announced the next morning that if she wanted to vacation beside a sweating man with a wrench, she could stay home. Now she set her bags on the table and listened. Something rustled behind the kitchen cabinets. "If you're larger than a mouse, I'm leaving." The rustling stopped. That goes for you too, she added, in case it was a mouse with ambition. She tried the light switch. Nothing happened. Martin had shut off the electricity, which was sensible, but the breaker box was in a closet behind a folding card table, 3 life jackets, and a rolled rug held together with electrical tape. Helen moved them one at a time. The rug released a puff of dust into her face. She sneezed so violently that one of the life jackets fell over. You could label everything except the place you hid everything. She found the breaker box and switched on the main. The refrigerator groaned. One lamp flickered to life, revealing cobwebs stretched between its shade and the wall. A second light bulb made a popping sound and went dark. The kitchen ceiling had a brown stain the size of a dinner plate above the sink. Directly beneath it sat a plastic bucket containing 2 inches of black water. Helen stared at the bucket. Martin had told her he fixed the leak. No, she corrected herself. Martin had said, I took care of it. That could mean repair, containment, or moving a bucket under the problem and deciding to die before the next rain. She pulled open the curtains. The lake brightened the room, but did not improve it. Paint peeled along the lower window frame. A dead fly lay on its back in the sink. On the counter, Martin had left a yellow legal pad beneath a coffee mug. Helen's breath caught before she reached it. The top page contained a list in his blocky handwriting. Porch. Jack East Corner. Pump. Call Wes Ree. Sockets. Below that, he had written milk, though there was no indication milk had ever been acquired. Helen sat at the table. She ran 2 fingers over the indentation left by his pen. The list was not a message. It offered no final declaration, no tenderness postponed until paper made it easier. It was Martin making a note to himself because he did not trust his memory and disliked admitting it. She turned the page anyway. Blank. Her phone rang inside her purse. The signal broke Aaron's name into pieces on the screen, but there was no mistaking who it was. Helen let it ring 4 times before answering. Good morning. Where are you? Good morning to you too. Mom? Helen looked through the window at Martin's truck, at the cottage. There was silence, then a hiss of static. You promised me. I promised I wouldn't come last night. That wasn't the point, and you know it. The point should have been expressed more precisely. Do not use Warren's voice on me. I'm not. Warren sounds like he's apologizing to a jury. Are you trying to be funny? Not very hard. Aaron breathed into the phone. Behind her, Helen heard an elevator chime and a muffled announcement from the hospital. Did you drive all the way there without telling anyone? I'm telling you now. After I called, because Linda saw the truck was gone. Linda should take up intelligence work. Is the road passable? It passed me. The cottage, Mom, is it safe? Helen glanced at the ceiling stain. That depends on whether you stand under certain parts. Oh my God, it's not collapsing. You don't know that. Neither do you. I know Martin did repairs with screws he kept in peanut butter jars. He washed the jars. That isn't a building code. Helen smiled despite herself. I'm going to look around, make an inventory, and stay one night. No, you can't say no to a sentence that doesn't ask a question. I can come after my shift. You will do no such thing. You worked yesterday, attended a funeral, and reorganized enough casseroles to supply a military campaign. I'm not leaving you there alone. I have been alone there for 20 minutes and remain alive. Helen. Aaron used her first name only when truly angry. It was not new. At 19, she had once shouted Helen across a crowded department store because Helen refused to buy her leather pants. Martin, who had been in Aaron's life less than 6 months, turned to Helen and said, You raised a brave one. Helen had answered, No, I raised a loud one. Now she softened her voice. I will call before dark. If the phone doesn't work, I'll drive into town. I brought food and my medicine. I'm not climbing onto the roof. You shouldn't even climb the porch. That advice arrived late. Mom, please. There it was, the word that made the argument less satisfying. Helen picked at the paper wrapper around Martin's coffee mug. I need to see what's here. We know what's there. Mold and hooks. I need to see it myself. Why? Helen looked at Martin's list again. I don't know yet. The signal failed before Aaron could answer. Helen held the phone to her ear through 2 seconds of silence, then set it face down on the table. The water pump was in a narrow utility room off the kitchen. Martin had attached operating instructions to the wall with a thumbtack. The instructions assumed a person could crouch, reach behind a pressure tank, and read faded pencil and dim light simultaneously. Helen found the valve, opened it, and flipped the switch. The pump shuddered like an animal waking from anesthesia. Pipes clanged inside the wall. When she turned the kitchen faucet, it coughed air, spat brown water into the sink, then produced a thin orange stream. Helen jumped back. Excellent! She let it run until the water became mostly clear, then decided bottled water would be one of the cottage's stronger features. The bedroom was colder than the rest of the place. 2 narrow beds occupied opposite walls, though Martin had slept alone in the larger one since Helen stopped coming. She stripped off the sheet and found dampness beneath the pillow. The mattress smelled sour. The closet held 3 flannel shirts, rubber boots, and a tan jacket Martin had owned since before their marriage. Helen lifted the jacket from its hook and pressed her face briefly against the collar. It smelled of cedar blocks. She put it back with more irritation than care. The inspection continued badly. Mice had chewed through a canvas tackle bag and made a nest from an old fishing map. The bathroom window would not close. One dining chair had a split in the seat that Martin had covered with a cushion. A cabinet contained 14 cans of baked beans. 9 expired 2 years earlier. By noon, Helen had filled 2 trash bags and made 3 lists: things to discard, things to repair, and things she did not understand well enough to classify. The aluminum boat sat beneath a tarp beside the shed. Its trailer tires were soft, and rainwater had pooled in the tarp deep enough to reflect the sky. Helen prodded it with a broom handle. Water spilled over the edge and soaked her right shoe. She was swearing at Martin when a pickup turned into the drive. A stocky man with a gray beard climbed out carrying a red metal case. He wore coveralls with Alvarez Marine stitched above the pocket. He stopped when he saw Helen. For an instant, he looked hopeful. Then he noticed the funeral flowers still lying on the passenger seat of Martin's truck. "Oh," he said. Helen rested both hands on the broom. "Can I help you?" The man removed his cap. His hair beneath it was flattened in a perfect ring. "Mrs. Hale?" "Yes, I'm Wes Alvarez. I own the marina down by the county ramp. Martin had some sockets of mine." Helen remembered the list. Apparently they became a matter of record. Wes looked toward the cottage. "I heard about Martin yesterday. Denise called me." "I'm sorry. Thank you. He was a good man." Helen had heard this from more than 100 people in 3 days. She understood that it was true. She was beginning to resent how efficiently everyone else could say it. "He was terrible at returning tools," she said. Wes's mouth moved uncertainly. Then he smiled. "Also true." She led him inside. He knew to step over the loose porch board. He knew the door had to be lifted slightly before it would close. In the kitchen, he went directly to the cabinet beneath the legal pad and retrieved a black socket set Helen had not noticed. "You've been here before," she said. "A few times." He opened the case. 3 spaces were empty. "Not all of them," Helen said. "No. This is what we call progress." Wes studied the ceiling stain. "That leak came back. Did it ever leave?" "He redid the flashing last September. He put a bucket under it. That too." Helen leaned against the counter. "How often was he up here last year?" Wes took his time fastening the case. "Not much after August. He told me he came every other Thursday. He drove up. Didn't always stay." "Where did he go?" "Marina, mostly. Sat in my office. Told me how I was running things wrong. That sounded like Martin." Wes glanced toward the yellow pad. He tired out faster than he wanted people to know. "I knew." "Yes, ma'am." The respectful answer irritated her. He didn't need to come up here to be tired. No. But he did. Wes put on his cap. Martin liked having somewhere people didn't watch him breathe. The sentence was gentle. It still struck like a slap. Helen turned toward the sink and watched rusty water tremble from the faucet. Behind her, Wes said, "I didn't mean, I know what you meant." He waited, perhaps expecting her to add something. She did not. At the door, he paused. "Porch is worse. I noticed. I can bring a jack tomorrow. I'm selling the place. Then the porch will still need a jack. I can hire someone. That's me." Helen looked at the stitched name on his coveralls. Wes shrugged. "Among other things. I don't accept charity." "Good. I charge." That got the nickel out of the parking meter. After he left, Helen ate half a ham sandwich standing at the sink. The wind rose through the afternoon. It pushed lake air through the bathroom window and rattled something loose beneath the eaves. She worked until her knees began to ache, then carried the sleeping bag from the truck and spread it on the couch. The furnace functioned, but smelled hot and dusty. She set the thermostat low, heated Linda's tetrazzini, and ate it from a chipped blue bowl. At dusk, she called Aaron from the end of the drive, where the signal was stronger. "I'm safe," she said when Aaron answered. "The structure remains upright. You're staying. One night. You said that this morning. And the morning is famous for its honesty." Aaron was quiet. "Did you find what you needed to see?" Helen looked back at the cottage. Warm light showed through the kitchen window, catching the crooked curtain Martin had hung. "No," she said. "I found a bucket. That night, rain struck the roof. At first the drops were soft. Then the wind drove them sideways, and the leak above the kitchen found the bucket with slow, hollow taps." Helen lay awake in Martin's sleeping bag, listening to the sound become steady. He had left her the hospital bills, the unpainted bathroom, a truck that pulled left, and this stubborn, leaking place her daughter hated. He had left strangers who knew where he kept his tools, and a sentence Helen could not stop hearing. Somewhere, people didn't watch him breathe. At 2 in the morning, the bucket began to overflow. Helen stood barefoot in the cold kitchen, water spreading around her feet, and hated her husband with a force that felt almost like having him back. She grabbed the bucket by its wire handle and sloshed half the water onto her pajama pants. Wonderful. The sink was only 4 steps away, but the floor had become slick. Helen shuffled rather than walked, poured out the black water, and returned the bucket beneath the leak. By then the drip had shifted 3 inches to the left. She moved the bucket. The water moved again. It ran along a seam in the ceiling before dropping in 2 places, as if the cottage had developed strategy. Helen put Martin's blue bowl under one drip and the saucepan under the other. She used both bath towels on the floor, then sacrificed the faded plaid blanket. The blanket darkened immediately. Outside, the wind pressed rain against the windows. Helen stood in the middle of the kitchen, holding an empty stockpot, and said, "If there is a 4th leak, we are selling to an arsonist." No 4th leak appeared. She stayed up until the rain weakened near dawn, emptying containers and writing kitchen ceiling in large letters across the top of her repair list. Beneath it she added mattress, window, pump, porch, mice, then circled everything. At 6:30, someone knocked. Helen opened the door wearing damp pajama pants, Martin's tan jacket, and 1 wool sock. Wes stood on the porch with a hydraulic jack in one hand and 2 coffees in a cardboard tray. His gaze moved from her clothing to the saucepan on the floor behind her. "Bad night?" "The cottage tried to drown me indoors. That leak came back." "You mentioned?" He held out a coffee. "Peace offering." "You didn't build the roof?" "No, but I knew the man who did." Helen took the cup. That sounds like an admission. A second pickup waited behind his. This one pale blue with a magnetic U.S. Postal Service sign attached to the door. A woman climbed out carrying a long carpenter's level and a brown paper bag. She was broad-shouldered, silver-haired, and dressed in jeans with a raincoat the color of mustard. She looked at the porch, looked at Helen, and said, "He let it get worse. Apparently that was one of his hobbies." The woman nodded as though Helen had confirmed something useful. "Denise Bell, Helen Hale." "I know. I saw you at the grocery store with him once, but you were arguing in the frozen food aisle. That does narrow it down. Pizza. Oh." Then he was wrong. Denise smiled and handed the level to Wes. "I brought cinnamon bread. It's not homemade, so neither of us has to pretend it's better than it is." Helen stepped aside. "Come in before the porch makes the decision for you." Wes refused to enter. He set down his coffee and crouched beside the east corner, studying the support posts. Denise remained on the top step until he told her to move, then came into the kitchen and placed the paper bag on the table. Her eyes took in the bowls and wet towels without fuss. "You shut off the propane last fall?" she asked. Martin said he did. Denise opened the cabinet beneath the stove, checked the valve, then walked out the back door. Helen followed her to the tank. "He asked me to check it in November," Denise said. "He asked the postal carrier. I live 2 roads over. You deliver mail and inspect fuel systems. I contain multitudes." Denise bent, brushed wet leaves from the gauge, and tapped the glass. "Nearly empty." "He must have run the furnace when he came up in February." "He was here in February?" "Once that I know of." Helen buttoned Martin's jacket. February had been the month he was admitted for fluid around his lungs. He had told her he spent that Thursday at the hardware store because he wanted to get out of the house. Was Wes with him? "I don't know." "Did Martin say why he came?" "Martin didn't say why he did anything." He'd tell you which county manufactured a bolt, but ask how he was feeling, and he became a foreign diplomat. Denise straightened. You knew him better than I did. The words could have sounded defensive. They did not. Denise simply handed Helen the information and allowed her to decide what to do with it. Helen looked toward the cottage. Wes was lying on the wet ground, positioning the jack beneath a beam. He told me the propane was half full, she said. Maybe it was when he looked. He told me that in March. Denise pushed her hands into her raincoat pockets. Then he lied. Helen appreciated her immediately and did not want to. They returned to the front. Wes had removed a section of decorative lattice and exposed one support post. The bottom 2 inches had softened into dark fibers. That post is done, he said. Done as in finished or done as in expensive? The second one. Helen took her coffee from the porch rail. How expensive? I can brace it today. New post, concrete footing, labor, maybe $600 if the beam's sound. Maybe? I don't argue with wood before coffee. She watched him set the jack. I'm not keeping the cottage. Still needs to stand while you sell it. You said that yesterday. Still true today. Denise took a slice of cinnamon bread from the bag and leaned against the truck. He does repeat himself. Wes looked up. You're free to go deliver coupons. It's my day off. That explains the cheerful coat. It's visible in fog. They bickered with the ease of people who had performed the same scene many times. Helen stood between them, holding the coffee Wes had brought, and felt abruptly, absurdly excluded. Martin belonged in this arrangement. She could hear where he would have interrupted, probably to accuse Wes of setting the jack too far inward. She could picture Denise handing him the level without being asked. Helen had believed the cottage was where Martin went to be alone. It was where he went to be someone else's regular. The thought followed her inside. She changed clothes, rolled the wet bedding into a plastic tub, and began opening drawers. Most contained ordinary debris, batteries furred with corrosion, bent candles, rubber bands dried into brittle loops. In one drawer, she found a stack of paper placemats from local restaurants. Martin had written notes on several of them. WES, trailer lights. D. Bell, back step N. Reed, carburetor. The initials meant nothing to Helen, except 2 of them now had faces. Noah Reed's name appeared on 3 placemats and an envelope containing receipts for engine parts. Martin had added the totals in the margin, crossed them out, and written paid beneath them. Helen set the envelope on the table. It was not a treasure. The receipts amounted to less than $500 over 18 months. Still, Martin had complained when Helen replaced their good toaster without waiting for a sale. Denise came in carrying the rotten section of porch post as if it were evidence. Wes says you should see this. I believe him. He says homeowners like visual aids. Wes says many things. That's the problem. She set the wood near the door and noticed the envelope. Noah's boat? You know him too? Everybody knows Noah. He runs charters out of the marina. Martin bought engine parts for him? Denise glanced at the receipts but did not pick them up. He helped rebuild an old inboard. Noah got cheap. Cheap being a relative term when the engine arrives in milk crates. Why? Why did he help? Why did he pay? I don't know that he did. Noah and Martin traded things. Work, parts, time. Men become very creative when they don't want to call something kindness. Helen put the receipts back in the envelope. Martin didn't believe in loaning money, no. He believed money damaged friendships. Maybe that's why it says paid. There was no accusation in Denise's voice. Helen heard one anyway. My daughter worked nights through nursing school, she said. Martin told her it built character. Denise's eyebrows lifted. Did it? It built resentment. Outside, the jack creaked beneath the porch. Denise brushed crumbs from the table into her palm. He talked about Aaron. Helen looked at her. Not details, Denise added. Mostly things she fixed at the hospital that had nothing to do with nursing. Scheduling, equipment, people. He liked telling stories where she was the only competent person in a building. That does sound like Aaron. Never said she came up here. She didn't. Denise accepted the boundary in Helen's voice. I'll let Wes know the propane level. The furnace will last tonight, but I wouldn't trust it much longer. There won't be another tonight. Good. Weather's turning colder. Helen followed her to the door. Did he come here to see Noah in February? Denise paused. I'm not asking you to protect him, Helen said. I wouldn't know how. Martin generally protected himself. From what? Denise's expression softened, which Helen disliked more than evasion. from being seen having trouble. She left before Helen could find a sharper question. By 11, Wes had braced the porch with a temporary post. He wrote an estimate on the back of a marina invoice and refused payment until Helen decided whether she wanted the permanent repair. "You charge strangely," she said. "I charge when I finish. You finish the brace. I own the jack. I'll need it back. So this is a hostage arrangement, basically." He packed his tools. "You driving home today?" That was the plan. Road south of the county line, flooded. How badly? Depends how much you like your truck becoming a boat. There must be another road, 20 extra miles west. Helen looked at the wet towels piled in the tub, the open drawers, and the 3 lists on the table. Her right knee had stiffened. The thought of driving 2 hours home, unloading everything, and returning to finish the inventory made the cottage feel more victorious than it deserved. "I'll leave in the morning. Propane's low. I have enough for one night." Wes pointed toward a small electric heater behind the couch. "Use that in the bedroom. Don't plug it into the extension cord." Martin did. I yelled, "Did that work?" "No." I'm shocked. After he left, Helen found a laundromat in town and washed the bedding. She bought cleaning supplies, mouse traps, drinking water, 2 light bulbs, and a turkey sandwich she did not need, because Denise's cinnamon bread had become lunch. At the hardware store, she stood before shelves of roofing sealant until an employee asked what she was trying to fix. "A mistake," Helen said. He waited. "A leak. Kitchen ceiling, roof pitch, steep enough to kill me." He recommended she call a roofer. Back at the cottage, the temporary porch support made the floor feel steadier. That small improvement irritated her too. She had wanted the place to be either harmless or impossible. Instead, it offered problems with prices. Her phone showed 3 missed calls from Aaron. Helen set it down and carried the clean bedding into the bedroom. While remaking the larger bed, she found something hard between the mattress and wall. It was an old photograph in a cheap plastic frame. Aaron stood at the edge of the lake in cut-off shorts and an enormous orange life jacket, holding a fishing pole. At 19, she had not yet learned to hide annoyance behind competence. Her eyes rolled toward the sky while Martin, younger and leaner, crouched beside her, adjusting the reel. Helen remembered taking the picture. She also remembered what came next. Aaron hooked Martin's cap on her first cast and sent it into the lake. Martin waded in, fully dressed to retrieve it, while Aaron laughed so hard she dropped the pole. Helen sat on the mattress. Someone had cracked the frame near Aaron's face. The photograph had been turned inward against the wall, hidden without being thrown away. Her phone rang again. This time she answered. "Before you start," Helen said, "I'm staying another night." Aaron let out a breath that traveled all the way from Milwaukee. "Why?" Helen looked down at the photograph of her daughter, laughing beside the man whose cottage she had refused. "Because the road is flooded." It was not the whole truth, but it was the part Helen could say. "The county website says the water should be down by morning," Aaron said. "You checked the county website?" "I checked 3 websites and called the sheriff's non-emergency line." "You called the sheriff because I spent a night at a cottage?" "I called about the road." "And what were you planning to do if the road stayed flooded? Send a helicopter?" "I was planning to know where my mother was." Helen placed the photograph face down on the bed. "You know exactly where I am? I know the address. That's not the same as knowing what you're doing. At this moment, I'm putting a fitted sheet on a mattress. Would you like hourly updates? I would like you to stop treating every reasonable question as an attack." Helen tucked the corner too hard. The elastic slipped free and snapped against her wrist. The truth was that Aaron's questions were reasonable. That did not make them harmless. "I'll call tomorrow," Helen said. "Are you eating?" "Yes." "What?" "Cinnamon bread." "That isn't a meal?" There was coffee, Mom, and a sandwich. "Good night, Aaron. Wait. Do you have enough of your blood pressure medication?" Helen closed her eyes. "I packed medication. How many days?" "1 night's worth." "So you're out. I have tomorrow morning. Then you have to come home. I'm aware of how pills work. I can bring more. You can go home after your shift and sleep. I'm already home." Helen glanced at the clock. Nearly 7. "You worked 12 hours, 11 and a half. That extra half hour should leave you fresh for a 4-hour round trip. I won't be able to sleep anyway. That is not a transportation plan." On the other end, a cabinet opened. Aaron lived in a 1-bedroom condo where every kitchen sound echoed. Helen pictured her daughter standing beneath the two bright pendant lights, still in navy scrubs, eating crackers over the sink because cooking for one had become another task to avoid. "Your pill organizer is on the breakfast table," Aaron said. "The green one. I know what color it is. I could drive up in the morning. You have another shift tomorrow night, not until 7. No, you don't get to make decisions for me either." The sentence silenced them both. Helen sat on the edge of the bed, the old photograph pressed beneath her hand. "That's fair," she said. Aaron seemed unprepared for agreement. "What? You heard me. Then I'll come. If you come, bring the green organizer and clothes for 2 days." 2 days? I have to finish the inventory. You were selling the place before you knew what was in it. I was considering selling it. You drove there with a trash bag and a lasagna, tetrazzini. What changed? Helen looked around the room. The answer was everywhere and nowhere. The damp mattress, the cracked frame, the list in Martin's handwriting, the socket set that had returned incomplete. "Nothing," she said. "That's the problem." Aaron arrived the next morning at 9:15, carrying Helen's medication, a canvas overnight bag, and a large black coffee. She had changed into jeans and a gray sweatshirt, but still wore the white running shoes from the funeral. Mud had already splashed one ankle. Helen watched through the front window as Aaron stood beside her sedan and stared at the cottage. Her daughter did not move for several seconds. Then she opened the rear door, took out the bag, and climbed the porch carefully at the far left, without being told. Helen opened the door before she knocked. "You remembered the weak side. I remember Martin yelling about it. He did most things loudly when lumber was involved." Aaron handed over the medication. "I brought 2 days, not 2 weeks. Thank you. And towels, the good ones, because all the bad ones were apparently here." Helen looked at the overnight bag. "Did you bring clean underwear or just contempt?" "Both. I packed efficiently." Aaron stepped inside and stopped. The cottage had been swept. Helen had washed the counters, set the mouse traps, and stacked the canned goods according to expiration date. None of that disguised the ceiling stain or the musty upholstery. Aaron's gaze traveled to the saucepan beneath the leak. "You slept here?" "In the bedroom," Wes suggested the heater. "Who's Wes?" "Marina mechanic. He owns the jack currently preventing the porch from dropping us into the mud." "You let a stranger jack up the porch?" "He charged me $600 in theory." "In theory?" "He hasn't finished. This gets worse every time you explain it." Helen carried the medication to the kitchen. "Coffee? I brought you coffee. I drank it." "Of course you did." Aaron went to the bedroom and inspected the heater cord, the outlet, and the fresh sheets. She checked the bathroom window and pressed her hand beneath the kitchen ceiling stain, as though moisture might confess to a trained professional. "You need a hotel," she said. "I need a roofer. You need to go home, not until I know whether the roof can be patched. You're repairing a place you intend to sell. I am preventing rain from entering a building. That's considered useful even during a sale. Do you know how much roof work costs?" "No. That's why a man named Gary is coming at noon." "You called a roofer? I can operate a telephone." Aaron opened her mouth and then shut it. A truck rolled into the driveway pulling a flatbed trailer loaded with lumber. Wes parked behind it. A second man occupied the passenger seat. "Apparently noon has become flexible," Helen said. Wes climbed out and waved. The other man was younger, perhaps 30, tall and narrow through the shoulders, with dark hair tied back at his neck. He wore a canvas work jacket and carried 2 paper sacks. "That's not Gary," Helen said. "I'm relieved you can still identify strangers," Aaron muttered. They went outside. Wes gestured toward the younger man, Noah Reed. He came to help with the post. Noah shifted one sack under his arm and extended his hand to Helen. "Mrs. Hale, I'm sorry about Martin." His grip was rough, his expression open but nervous. He looked toward Aaron, and something like recognition passed over his face. "This is my daughter, Aaron," Helen said. "I've seen your picture." Aaron's shoulders tightened. "Where?" Noah appeared to realize he had stepped wrong. Around? Martin had one at the marina. Helen thought of the photograph beside the mattress. "Which picture? The one with the fish?" Aaron gave a short laugh. "That narrows it down around here. You were holding it like this." Noah lifted both hands at arm's length, elbows locked, and leaned his head away. "Martin said you wouldn't touch it until he promised it was dead. It moved. That's what he said. It was a northern pike. They look hostile after death." Noah smiled. He kept the picture over his workbench. Aaron looked at Helen, but Helen had never been inside the marina office. She had not known Martin kept any photograph there. Noah handed her one of the paper sacks. Breakfast sandwiches? Denise said you were eating bread for meals. That woman operates quickly. She delivers information faster than mail. Wes opened the trailer straps. Noah owed Martin some hours. Noah's smile faded at the edges. More than some. You don't owe me, Helen said. I told him that, Wes said. He doesn't listen. Learned it from Martin, Noah replied. Aaron folded her arms. What exactly are you doing? Replacing the porch post, Wes said. For free? For $600, Helen said. For $450, Wes corrected. Noah's labor brings it down. I didn't approve a change. You approve of paying more? I approve of knowing what I'm paying. Noah looked between them with interest. Aaron touched Helen's elbow. Can I talk to you inside? You can talk to me here. Inside. Helen allowed herself to be steered into the cottage, mostly because the men needed to carry lumber past them. The moment the door closed, Aaron said, You don't know these people. I met Wes yesterday and Denise this morning. Who's Denise? Postal carrier, mustard coat, strong opinions about propane. That is not reassuring. They knew Martin. That doesn't mean they're safe. Aaron, they are replacing rotten wood in daylight. This is a very slow robbery. Aaron lowered her voice. Did you hear what that guy said? He owed Martin. Now he wants to work it off for you. He offered labor. He didn't ask for my bank account. You don't know what Martin promised him. No, I don't know much of anything Martin did here. The admission took the heat out of Aaron's argument. Outside, a drill began to whine. Aaron walked to the window. Wes and Noah unloaded a pressure-treated post. Noah lifted one end while Wes directed him with 2 fingers. Martin paid for his boat engine, Helen said. How much? Some parts, less than $500 according to the receipts. Why? I don't know. He told me he couldn't help with the down payment on my first house because money between family got ugly. Helen remembered. Aaron had asked for $3,000. Martin refused at dinner, then spent the next 6 weekends replacing outlets, patching drywall, and rebuilding the front steps of the house she eventually bought without his money. You managed, Helen said. That isn't the point. No. Aaron faced her. Do you think he gave money away up here? He didn't have money to give away. Then what are you looking for? I'm not looking for anything. You're going through drawers. You made lists. You're fixing the porch. I am taking care of what he left. There it is. What? Aaron gestured around the cottage. That's what you always do. Something is broken, and before you even decide whether you want it, you start taking care of it. The words hit too close to be dismissed. Helen reached for the breakfast sack and removed a sandwich wrapped in foil. You drove 2 hours to bring me pills I could have replaced at a pharmacy. That's different. How? Because you're my mother, and this belonged to my husband. Exactly. It belonged to him. You don't owe the cottage 4 years of your life because he died before finishing his list. Helen set the sandwich down. Outside, Noah laughed at something Wes said. The sound carried through the thin walls. Aaron glanced toward the bedroom. Is that my picture in there? Helen did not answer quickly enough. Aaron walked past her and returned holding the cracked plastic frame. She stared at the image of herself at 19, laughing while Martin crouched beside the fishing pole. One thumb passed over the damaged corner. Where did you find this? Behind the mattress. He hid it? Or it fell? The frame is cracked. I can see that. Aaron turned it over. The cardboard backing had been taped twice. In faded ink, Martin had written, Aaron, first fish, though no fish appeared in the photograph. Her mouth tightened. He always remembered it wrong, she said. I didn't catch anything that day. He caught the pike and made me hold the pole for the picture. Helen waited. Aaron returned the frame to the table, face down. Gary at noon? She asked. That's what he said. I'll stay until you get the roof estimate. You should sleep before work. I'll sleep afterward. The drill outside stopped. Wes called for Helen to come, look at the beam. Aaron reached the door first, but stepped aside, letting her mother decide whether to go out. Helen picked up Martin's list from beside the coffee mug and folded it once. Then she left it on the table and walked past her daughter into the cold. The beam was sound except where the old post had held it. Wes pressed a screwdriver into the exposed wood and showed Helen the clean, pale mark. We got lucky. Martin would have said he planned it that way. Martin once drilled through a water line and said he was checking the pressure. Noah, holding the new post upright, laughed. He told me that story differently. He lied. He said you drilled through it. Wes turned slowly. Put the post down and leave. Aaron came out behind Helen, carrying the cracked photograph. She stood on the stable section of porch and watched as Wes measured the opening for the third time. How long will this take? She asked. 2 hours if nobody asks how long it'll take. I have to leave by 3:30. Wes looked at Helen. Does the porch have an appointment? My daughter doesn't trust me alone with construction workers. I didn't say that, Aaron said. You said it indoors. I said you don't know them. Wes adjusted the pencil behind his ear. She doesn't. Noah nodded. We could be terrible. You're not helping, Aaron said. I'm trying to disclose risk. Helen took the photograph from her daughter before it got dropped. Why did Martin keep a picture of Aaron at the marina? Wes examined the tape measure with sudden concentration. Noah answered. It was pinned over the bench. He said it reminded him not to force people to enjoy themselves. Aaron's eyebrows rose. He forced me to hold that pole for 20 minutes. Then the lesson took time. A corner of her mouth moved. Aaron caught it and stopped. Noah lowered the post onto 2 blocks. He talked about you a lot. What did he say? That you work nights, that you could get an insurance company to approve things they had already denied twice, that when his cardiologist's office lost a referral, you found it in somebody else's chart before they did. That was a privacy nightmare, Aaron said. He made it sound heroic. He made everything sound like an equipment failure. Noah smiled. That too. Helen returned the photograph to the kitchen. Through the screen door, she heard Aaron ask Noah how long he had known Martin. 6 years, he said. 6 years. Long enough to have known Martin before the heart failure, before sodium charts appeared on their refrigerator, before Helen learned to tell the difference between his ordinary snoring and the breathing that meant she should sit him upright. She put the photograph on the table, face up this time. At noon, Gary arrived in a white van with ladders strapped to the roof and a pencil tucked through the gray hair above his ear. He introduced himself without removing his sunglasses, even indoors, and studied the ceiling stain as if it had insulted his family. You've got more than one problem, he said. I've noticed. He climbed into the attic access above the bedroom closet, took photographs with his phone, then went onto the roof while Helen stood below, resisting the urge to tell him where to place his feet. Aaron failed to resist. Is that section stable? She called. Gary looked down from the ladder. Which section? The section you're standing on. It is currently. That isn't an answer. It's the best roof answer I have. Helen handed Aaron half a breakfast sandwich. Eat something. I'm not hungry. You criticize my meals while refusing your own? I had dinner at 2 this morning. That was 8 hours ago. Aaron accepted the sandwich and bit into it with the expression of a woman ending an argument for procedural reasons. Noah and Wes worked beneath the porch. Every few minutes came a dull hammer strike, or the buzz of a saw. The cottage had not contained this much activity in years. Martin preferred repairs conducted alone, slowly, with frequent trips to the hardware store and language that frightened birds. Gary returned carrying grit on his shoulders. The flashing around the vents failed, he said. There are shingles lifting on the lakeside. Decking soft near the kitchen, but not all the way through. What does that mean in dollars? Helen asked. To stop the active leak and replace the bad section, $1,200. I'd want to open it up first. If the decking's worse than it looks, maybe 16. 100? Aaron asked. Gary slid his sunglasses down far enough to look at her. Yes, ma'am. If I meant $16, I would have brought tape. And the whole roof? 14 to 18,000, depending on what I find. Aaron made a sound low in her throat. Gary turned to Helen. If you're keeping the place, don't wait more than a year or 2. If you're selling, patch it and disclose the age. She's selling, Aaron said. Helen took the estimate from him. How soon can you patch it? Thursday. That's 4 days. Forecast is dry. I'll call you. Gary left without pressuring her, which made the decision worse. Aaron waited until his van reached the road. $18,000, I heard. For a cottage that also needs a porch, a pump, a mattress, wiring, and probably an exorcism. The wiring works. One bulb exploded. That was the bulb. You don't know that. Helen folded the estimate and placed it under Martin's coffee mug. I'll pay for the patch. Why? So the ceiling doesn't fall in while I decide. Decide what? We already decided. No. You decided at the funeral, and I failed to object. Aaron's face closed slightly. Do you want it? I don't know. You hate fishing. I dislike fish. Fishing also involves water, boats, sandwiches, and long periods when nobody talks. You hate boats. I hate Martin's boat trailer. The boat and I have not discussed our relationship. This isn't funny. No, it's $1,200. Erin set the rest of her sandwich on the table. You have hospital bills. I also have savings. Not enough to throw at this place because you feel guilty. Helen looked toward the porch. What do you think I feel guilty about? For not coming here with him. For being relieved when he left. For whatever people feel after someone dies and suddenly all the things that annoyed them seem sacred. That's remarkably specific. I'm not criticizing you. You are. You're just doing it in your hospital voice. Erin picked up her coffee, found it empty, and set it down again. I watched you turn your whole life into keeping him alive. I was his wife. You were his nurse, his driver, his cook, his secretary, and the only person he was allowed to be rude to because he was sick. He was rude before he was sick. That's supposed to help. It's supposed to be accurate. The saw outside went silent. Neither woman moved until it started again. Helen lowered her voice. You don't get to reduce my marriage to the parts that made you angry, and you don't get to call it love every time he let you do something for him. Helen felt the words in her chest before she understood them. Erin looked away first. I'm tired. Yes, I'm going to sleep for an hour. Take the bedroom. I wasn't going to take the couch beside the power tools. She carried her overnight bag down the short hallway and closed the door. Helen stood in the kitchen with Gary's estimate beneath Martin's cup and the unfinished sandwich on the table. Outside, Wes called for a level. Noah answered that Denise had brought one. Wes said Denise had taken it home. Noah said it was beside the truck. The ordinary argument steadied her. She took the estimate outside. Do the permanent repair, she told Wes. He glanced at the paper in her hand. Roof bad? Not good. Nothing up here is good. We grade on survival. How much do I owe today? $450. I'll write a check when you finish. Wes nodded, satisfied. Noah braced the post while Wes drilled. Up close, Helen could see a pale scar running from Noah's thumb into his sleeve. Martin helped with your engine? She asked. Noah looked over. He did. I found receipts. I paid him back. They say paid. I wrote it because he kept leaving the envelope in my truck. He bought the parts. He picked them up. I gave him cash. All of it? Noah shifted his grip on the post. Eventually? That means no. It means I was late. How late? Helen, Wes said quietly. She turned on him. I'm trying to understand my husband's finances. It wasn't a fortune, Noah said. It was $468. I gave him $200 up front. The rest took me 4 months. Helen had seen the totals. Noah was telling the truth. Why did he help you? She asked. My charter business was going under. Engine failed before Memorial Day. I'd put everything else into insurance and dock fees. Why, Martin? I didn't ask him. Wes mentioned it, and Martin showed up with tools. Noah looked toward the lake. He stayed 6 nights, slept on that couch. We rebuilt most of the engine at the marina. 6 nights. Martin had told Helen the cottage plumbing required attention. What year? 2 summers ago. The summer when his ankles began swelling again. Helen had packed low-sodium meals into a cooler and made him promise not to lift anything heavier than a grocery bag. Noah must have seen something in her expression. I didn't know how sick he was, he said. He said his heart was stable. Martin considered a stopped clock stable. I should have known. Yes, Helen said. Noah accepted the answer. That made her feel worse. Wes resumed drilling. He sat down when he needed to. He should have come home when he needed to. He didn't want to. The drill stopped again. Wes wiped sawdust from his beard. That came out wrong? No, Helen said. It came out clearly. She went inside, took the yellow legal pad, and wrote beneath Martin's list. Roof patch, Thursday porch, paid. Then she added medication, because Erin was right and Helen had only 2 days. Her daughter slept through the final hour of construction. When Erin emerged, lines from the pillow marked one cheek. She inspected the new porch post, bounced once on the boards, and made Wes explain the footing. It'll hold, he told her. How long? Longer than me. That's not measurable. I'm 63. Use actuarial tables. Erin surprised Helen by laughing. She left at 3:20 with Martin's photograph wrapped in a clean dish towel on the passenger seat. Helen noticed only after the sedan disappeared. She found a message on her phone 10 minutes later. I'm taking the picture to replace the frame. Call me tonight. Take your pills. Helen read it twice. Then she called Gary and scheduled the roof patch. On the yellow pad, beneath propane, she wrote groceries 1 week. For the first time, the list was hers. The propane delivery cost $281. Helen stood beside the tank while the driver printed the receipt from a machine on his belt. The paper emerged warm and curled at the edges. "That's for half?" she asked. "100-gallon minimum." "I'm not staying 100 gallons. Gas doesn't know that." He handed her the receipt and drove away before she could dislike him personally. By noon, she had spent another $74 at the grocery store and hardware store. She bought eggs, soup, apples, coffee, a new flashlight, rubber gloves, mousetrap bait, and a bath mat, because standing barefoot on the cottage's cracked bathroom tile felt like punishment. The cashier rang up a bag of chocolate-covered raisins. "I didn't put those there," Helen said. The cashier, a woman with purple glasses, turned the bag over. "They were in your cart. They must have fallen in. Common problem. Helen kept them." She returned to find Denise sitting on the porch with 2 mugs and a thermos balanced between them. "You break in often?" Helen asked. Door was locked. "Then how did you make coffee?" "I brought it. That answer lacks adventure." Denise moved 1 mug off the top step. "I walk this road 3 mornings a week. Martin usually sat out here if the weather wasn't trying to remove skin." Helen lowered herself beside her. The new porch post looked almost too straight for the cottage. Her knee complained halfway down, and she had to extend 1 leg in front of her. Denise noticed but did not offer a hand. Helen appreciated that too. They drank while gulls moved over the lake. From somewhere downshore came the repeated metallic strike of someone hammering. "Did he talk when he sat out here?" Helen asked. "Sometimes." "About what?" "Boats, weather, bad municipal decisions." That was 90% of Martin's conversation. "He talked about you, so I've been told." Apparently he ran a traveling lecture series on his family. Denise blew across her coffee. "You want to know what he said, but you resent that he said it." Helen looked at her. "Do you always begin friendships by identifying the worst part of a person?" "Usually I wait for lunch. We're not friends." "Then I'm ahead of schedule." Helen opened the chocolate-covered raisins and offered the bag. Denise took 3. "What did he say about me?" "That you could make a meal out of anything except trout." "I can make a meal out of trout. I choose not to." "That you hated this cottage because he never finished 1 repair before beginning another." "Accurate." "That you read the last page of mystery novels first." Helen turned toward her. "I do not." His words. I checked the page count. "He said that was your official position." Helen put a raisin in her mouth. "He watched woodworking videos at double speed and then complained the men moved too fast." Denise laughed. The sound was low and unguarded. For several minutes they watched the water without speaking. It was not silence like the house. This silence had wind inside it, branches moving, a truck passing on the road behind them. Helen could understand why Martin had sat there. Understanding did not excuse him. It merely made anger harder to arrange. "Were you married?" she asked. 31 years, widowed, divorced." "I'm sorry, I'm not." He married a dental hygienist in Racine and discovered that being misunderstood was not unique to our marriage. Helen smiled. Denise reached into her raincoat and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. "Propane company gives a discount if 3 addresses share a delivery route. Wes and I are already on it. You can add this place. I won't be here long. Then don't. You carry forms on recreational walks? I was a postal carrier for 27 years. Paper follows me." Helen unfolded it. The discount amounted to 12 cents a gallon. Martin would have completed the form before finishing his coffee. Helen folded it again and put it in her pocket. Gary arrived Thursday with 1 employee and enough equipment to make the cottage appear under siege. They spread tarps, carried bundles up the ladder, and opened the roof above the kitchen. Helen made sandwiches because watching men work without feeding them felt unnatural. Ham, mustard, cheese, and pickles went onto 4 plates before she remembered there were only 3 of them. She wrapped the extra sandwich and put it in the refrigerator. At 11, Gary climbed down holding a dark, crumbling piece of plywood. "Decking's worse around the vent." "How much worse?" 300 worse. Everything here speaks in hundreds. Roofing has a limited vocabulary." Helen approved the additional work. She wrote the new total on the yellow pad and stared at it longer than necessary. 1,500 for the roof. 450 for the porch. Propane, groceries, cleaning supplies, gasoline. The cottage had consumed more than $2,000 in 5 days without acquiring a single thing a buyer would admire. It would still have crooked cabinets, old furniture, and a bathroom fan that sounded like a lawnmower swallowing a spoon. She sat at the kitchen table and opened the folder where she kept Martin's final medical bills. 2 had been corrected after insurance adjustments. 1 remained disputed. She had enough savings. Enough was not the same as endless, and grief had made every number feel temporary. Gary knocked dust from his boots at the door. Smells good. It's sandwiches, not perfume. Roofing lowers standards. He and his employee ate on the porch. Helen joined them, and Wes arrived halfway through lunch carrying the jack he had finally come to retrieve. He accepted the extra sandwich after saying twice that he had already eaten. Liar, Gary said. I had a donut at 6. It was large. Noah stopped by to collect a fuel filter from Wes's truck and ended up with half of Helen's sandwich. Denise appeared in her blue postal vehicle, though she was off duty because she had seen the trucks. Within 20 minutes, Helen's planned meal for 3 had become crumbs for 7. You people circle food like birds, she said. Martin told us you could cook, Noah replied. Martin is no longer responsible for inventory. The sentence quieted them for a beat. Then Wes held up an empty plate. Does that mean there's pie? Helen took the plate from him. It means you're washing dishes. The roof was watertight by 4. Gary poured water from a hose around the repaired flashing, while his employee stood inside watching the ceiling. No drops appeared. Helen paid by check. Her handwriting shook slightly on the amount, partly from fatigue and partly because writing it made the cottage real in a way intentions had not. After the trucks left, she sat on the new porch step with her shoes off. Her knees ached, her lower back burned. The cottage looked almost exactly as it had that morning. That was the cruelty of necessary repairs. Money disappeared into the privilege of nothing getting worse. Her phone rang. The number was local to Milwaukee, but not saved. Mrs. Hale? A cheerful woman said. This is Janice Porter with River West Realty. I'm calling to confirm our walkthrough tomorrow at 10. Helen rubbed the bridge of her nose. Walkthrough of what? Your home on Hawthorne Drive. There was a pause filled by clicking keys. I spoke with your daughter last week, Janice continued. She said Friday should work, but I wanted to verify. My daughter does not own my home. Oh, of course not. She was very clear that you're the owner. Was she? She said you'd recently had a loss and might be difficult to reach. Difficult to reach? Helen stared at the lake until its surface blurred. I'm reachable now, she said. Cancel the appointment. I'm so sorry. I understood that you wanted a market analysis. My daughter wanted one. Should I contact her? No, I'll do that. Helen ended the call. She did not call Aaron immediately. Anger demanded movement before speech. She carried her dishes inside, cleaned the kitchen, emptied the mouse traps, and folded the dry towels into a cabinet. She packed a bag for home. At 7, she finally dialed. Aaron answered on the 3rd ring. How did the roof go? Janice called. Silence. The realtor, Helen said. I know who Janice is. She was planning to walk through my house tomorrow. She was going to give you an estimate. She was going to enter my house while I was 2 hours away. I would have been there. That improves nothing. Mom, you said the house is too much. I said the yard is too much. I said the stairs are inconvenient. I said the property taxes are offensive. None of that invited you to make an appointment. I didn't sign anything. You keep saying that as if the absence of fraud should earn you a medal. Aaron's voice hardened. I was trying to help. You were trying to move me. I was trying to give you information. You had information. I had an appointment. You're spending thousands of dollars on a building you don't even like, but somehow a free market estimate is reckless? Helen gripped the phone. This is not about money. Then what is it about? It is about you making my life easier by removing me from it. That is not fair. No, it isn't. Aaron inhaled sharply. Do you know what else isn't fair? Getting a phone call at 3 in the morning because you fell on stairs you already admitted you shouldn't be climbing. That has not happened. It could. So could a meteor. Stop. Helen stood. Sitting made the argument feel like something being done to her. You toured a place for me. You called a realtor. You counted the minutes between that house and your condo. Did you once ask where I wanted to live? I asked you for 3 years, and you said you and Martin would decide later. Martin was dying for those 3 years. I noticed. The words came flat, then broke at the end. Helen closed her eyes. On Aaron's side, something scraped across a counter. "I'm not trying to erase you," she said. "I am trying not to lose you 6 months after I lose him. You rejected everything of his before we'd taken the flowers out of the hearse. I rejected the cottage. You rejected him." Aaron went silent. Helen wished the sentence back as soon as it left her. Not because it was entirely false, but because it was too large to be fair. "I have to work," Aaron said. "Honey, I'll cancel Janice." "I already did." "Of course you did." The line ended. Helen held the phone until the screen went dark. The cottage creaked around her. The repaired roof remained silent under a light evening rain, every drop now traveling where it was supposed to go. She unpacked the bag she had prepared for home. On the yellow pad, beside groceries, 1 week, she crossed out 1. Then she wrote 2. The word 2 looked childish in her handwriting. Helen stared at it until the rain stopped, then tore the page from the pad, folded it into quarters, and placed it in the kitchen drawer. She started a fresh list on the next sheet. Call Aaron appeared at the top. She did not call. At 6 the next morning, she sent a message instead. "I should not have said you rejected him. I was angry. The realtor is still canceled." Aaron answered 11 minutes later. "Thank you for the first part. Nothing about the second." Helen took her coffee to the porch. The air had sharpened overnight, and mist softened the line between lake and sky. Water no longer came through the kitchen ceiling. The porch did not tilt beneath her chair. $2,000 had purchased dry coffee and level sitting. It was not nothing. She spent the morning sorting the shed. Martin had kept every length of rope longer than his forearm, including several that had hardened into shapes of their own. Rusted hinges filled a coffee can. 3 boat cushions smelled as if they had spent years absorbing lake water and regret. Behind a stack of folding chairs, she found an old window air conditioner. A strip of masking tape across the top read, "Works loud." Helen wiped dust from its grill. It was too old to sell for much, but she wanted it out of the shed before rain reached it through a gap in the siding. She slid it onto the small hand truck, secured it with rope, and began pulling it toward the cottage. The ground was soft. 1 wheel sank. Helen pulled harder. The hand truck twisted, and the air conditioner tipped toward her. She caught one corner against her hip, lost her grip, and watched it strike the cottage's lower window frame. Wood cracked with a short, expensive sound. The machine landed face down in the mud. Helen stood frozen, both hands still raised. Pain spread across her hip. Her right forearm had been scraped through the sweater. Blood appeared in a thin, bright line. A vehicle stopped on the road. Denise's blue postal truck reversed into the drive. She got out, shut the door, and regarded the air conditioner. "I assume you're installing it low?" Helen lowered her hands. "It attacked me." "Did you call for help?" "I called it several things." Denise approached without hurrying. "Can you move your fingers?" Helen opened and closed her hand. "Yes." "Wrist, yes. Hip, bruised dignity. That's not weight-bearing." Helen took 2 steps. Her hip hurt, but held. Denise inspected the scrape, went to her truck, and returned with a small first aid kit. "Sit." "I don't need sit, or I'll use my retired government employee voice." Helen sat on the porch. Denise cleaned the cut and applied a bandage without commentary. "I could have moved it," Helen said. "You did move it, not to the intended location. Intentions are private. Results are in the mud." Helen looked at the cracked window trim. "Martin would have told me to wait. Probably. He would have made that face." "What face?" "The one where his lips disappeared and his eyebrows became management." Denise smiled. "You could have asked Wes. I am capable of moving an air conditioner. Apparently not that one. On that ground, with that hand truck." Helen pulled her arm away after Denise secured the bandage. "You don't have to agree so quickly. Would you prefer concern or lying?" Lying could be restful. Together, they tipped the machine upright. Denise insisted they leave it where it was until someone stronger came. Helen hated the phrase "someone stronger," even though she had used it herself for 30 years, without considering who occupied the weaker side of it. "I'm not helpless," she said. "I didn't say you were. You thought it. I thought you made one bad decision involving mud. That's all. I also think you're wearing the wrong shoes." Helen looked down at her smooth-soled sneakers. Denise pointed toward the bandage. "Needing help with one machine doesn't turn your entire life over to whoever lifts it." The words landed close to the place Aaron had bruised. Helen went inside and put 2 cans of tomato soup into a saucepan. Have you eaten? It's 10:30. That wasn't an answer. No? You can help me finish the bread. Denise removed her raincoat. Now we're friends? No. Your evidence disposal. They ate soup and grilled cheese at the kitchen table. Helen had found a cast iron skillet in the lower cabinet, scrubbed the rust from it, and discovered the stove's smallest burner worked better than the others. Denise dipped the corner of her sandwich into the soup. Martin used to make grilled cheese with mayonnaise. On the outside, I taught him that. He said a man at the marina did. Martin also claimed he invented putting newspaper under paint cans. I'm beginning to question his legacy. A truck horn sounded outside. Wes and Noah arrived together. Wes carried the air conditioner away from the mud, while Noah examined the cracked trim. I can fix the frame, Noah said. How much? It's a piece of trim. How much? 20 for material. And labor? You fed me. That was half a sandwich. It was a good half. Helen looked at Denise. Men become very creative when they don't want to call something kindness, Denise reminded her. $40, Helen told Noah. 30, 35, deal. Wes appeared in the doorway. Are there more sandwiches? You smelled them from the road? Noah saw Denise's truck. That means food? It means she's avoiding her own refrigerator. Denise raised her middle finger without turning around. Helen looked at the remaining soup. There was enough for 1 bowl, perhaps 2 if she added milk. She opened another can, then another. She made 4 more grilled cheese sandwiches while Noah replaced the broken trim and Wes carried the air conditioner into the shed. The men ate on the porch, each holding a bowl between both hands. Noah closed his eyes after the first spoonful. It's canned soup, Helen said. It's hot. So is water. Water doesn't have grilled cheese. Wes wiped his beard with a paper napkin. Diner by the marina closes on Tuesdays now. Carol can't keep staff. What do you usually eat? Helen asked. Donuts. I've seen the results. He patted his stomach. This is a respected marina figure. Noah pointed his spoon at Helen. You could sell lunches, she laughed. They continued eating. I'm serious, Noah said. 3 mechanics at Wes's place. Me when I'm running charters, the guys at the boatyard. Tuesdays are bad. I am not opening a restaurant. Not a restaurant. Soup. That is how restaurants begin. First soup, then health inspectors, then matching shirts. Wes set his empty bowl on the step. Charge $12 for soup and a sandwich. Make 10. When they're gone, they're gone. $12 for canned tomato soup is criminal. Then make something better. Helen narrowed her eyes. Denise spoke without looking up from her bowl. He did that on purpose. I know. Noah reached for his wallet. How much for today? You are not paying. Then it's charity. Helen understood the trap and disliked him for laying it neatly. $5, she said. All 3 paid. Wes left a 10 and refused change. Helen followed him to his truck with $5 in her hand until he drove away, laughing. The money sat on the kitchen table after they left. A 10, 2 5s, and 3 1s, because Noah had emptied his pockets. $23 for food she would have cooked anyway. Helen folded the bills into Martin's yellow pad. The following Tuesday, she made chicken noodle soup from a grocery store, roasted chicken, and assembled 10 ham sandwiches. She wrote soup plus sandwich $10 on a piece of cardboard and propped it against the porch rail. At 11:30, nobody came. At noon, Denise arrived and paid, despite being told she did not count. At 12:15, Wes sent one of his mechanics, a 50-year-old woman named Carla, who smelled of motor oil and carried exact change. Noah appeared with 2 charter captains. Gary stopped because he saw the trucks. By 1, the soup was gone. Helen had forgotten spoons for 3 people, underestimated the coffee, and put too much mustard on half the sandwiches. Her feet hurt from standing. The kitchen felt 6 degrees warmer than the rest of the cottage. She closed the cardboard sign and refused to make anything else. A man she did not know arrived at 1:15. I heard there was lunch. You heard incorrectly. He looked at the empty pot. Next Tuesday? Maybe. He nodded as though maybe were a business hour and left. Helen counted $90 after groceries. It was not meaningful income. It did not touch the roof bill. But the money had come from something she chose to do, in hours she chose, for people who left when the food was gone. No one asked her to monitor a blood pressure cuff. No one complained that soup contained too much sodium and then ate potato chips in the garage. She washed the pot, sat at the table, and called Aaron. Her daughter answered cautiously. "Are you all right?" "Yes." "Then why are you calling at 2 in the afternoon?" "I'm allowed to call without an emergency." "I know. You usually don't." Helen rubbed the ache beneath her right knee. "I'm coming home tomorrow for clothes. You're staying longer." "A little?" "How long is a little?" "I'll decide when I arrive." Aaron was quiet. Helen added, "My arm is bandaged, but before you react, it's a scrape." "What happened?" "An air conditioner disagreed with me." "Do you need a doctor?" "No, Denise cleaned it." "Who is Denise?" "The mustard coat." "The propane woman." "Yes." Aaron exhaled. "I can meet you at the house tomorrow. You don't need to supervise me packing. I have your picture." Helen looked toward the empty spot on the table where the cracked frame had been. "Did you fix it?" "I replaced the frame. That was fast. I didn't want it sitting around broken." They both heard the second meaning. "What time?" Helen asked. 11. "I'll be there." After the call, Helen took the $23 from the yellow pad and added it to the lunch money. On a clean page she wrote Tuesday lunch, 10 only. Below that, after some thought, she added, "Thursday?" She left the question mark. The house smelled faintly of funeral lilies and refrigerator air. Helen entered through the garage carrying 2 empty duffel bags. Martin's pickup fit badly beside the recycling bins, leaving her less room than usual. She bumped the door against an old snow shovel and heard Martin's voice in her head, telling her the truck should be backed in. "It's parked," she told him. The kitchen was as she had left it except for the casseroles. Aaron had labeled each foil lid with cooking instructions and dates. A bag of condolence cards sat on the counter beside a stack of unopened mail. Helen turned on the faucet, then turned it off without using the water. She had expected relief. The house had a reliable roof, clear pipes, level floors, and no visible rodents. Instead, it felt too prepared to continue without anyone. Upstairs, she stopped halfway to catch her breath. Her right knee had stiffened during the drive, and the bruise on her hip pulled when she climbed. She rested one hand on the banister. Aaron was not wrong about the stairs. That did not make them Aaron's stairs to remove. In the bedroom, Helen packed jeans, shirts, underwear, a warmer coat, and the rubber-soled shoes she should have worn in the mud. She filled a second bag with linens and kitchen towels. Martin's closet remained closed. She opened it anyway. His good suit was gone, buried with him. The empty hanger hung between 2 flannel shirts. On the shelf above, a shoebox held belts he had not worn since his waist began swelling from medication. Helen lifted the box, intending to move it aside, and found a canvas tool roll beneath it. She unfastened the ties. 6 carving knives rested inside narrow pockets, their wooden handles worn smooth. Martin had sharpened them for years, but had never carved anything more ambitious than replacement pegs and one lopsided duck he claimed was a sandpiper. Helen wrapped the roll again and placed it in her duffel. The doorbell rang at 11 exactly. Aaron stood outside holding the photograph against her chest. She had changed from hospital scrubs into black pants and a green sweater Helen did not recognize. "You knocked," Helen said. "I wasn't sure whether you were here. My truck is in the garage. Martin's truck, currently driven by me." Aaron stepped inside and handed her the photograph. The new frame was plain walnut, much heavier than the cracked plastic one. Aaron had cleaned the image but not altered it. 19-year-old Aaron still leaned away from the invisible fish. Martin still crouched beside her, looking at the reel rather than the camera. "You picked a nice frame," Helen said. "It was the only one that didn't look like a wedding gift." "You could keep it. I don't want it." The answer came too fast. Helen waited. Aaron looked toward the living room. "It belongs at the cottage." "All right. I mean, if you're keeping pictures there while you sort." "All right." Aaron took off her coat. "Let me see your arm. It's a scrape. Let me see it." Helen rolled up her sleeve. The skin around the scrape had bruised purple but was not swollen. "Did you hit your head?" "No. Any dizziness?" "I have been dizzy with rage several times." "Physical dizziness?" "No." Aaron examined the bandage Denise had replaced the day before. "This is fine. I'll notify the press. You could have called me." "And said what? Drive 2 hours to witness my Band-Aid? You call when something happens. Why? So you can worry in real time? So I don't find out 3 days later while you make jokes." Helen rolled down her sleeve. "I'm sorry." Erin's hands dropped to her sides. You are? I should have told you. Oh, don't make me regret it. I'm trying to enjoy the moment. They carried the duffel bags downstairs. Erin stopped when she saw the carving tools. You're taking those? I found them. You used to hate those knives. I hated him sharpening them during television shows. The sound was like someone cutting a plate. Erin touched the rolled canvas. He sharpened my kitchen knives every Christmas. He sharpened everyone's knives. It was how he expressed holiday cheer. He missed last year. He was sick. He was sick the year before. Helen put the tool roll beside the photograph. Last year was worse. Erin nodded. I know. They stood in the kitchen until the refrigerator motor came on. Helen opened the freezer. Take a lasagna. I don't need one. You're working nights and getting divorced. You need a lasagna? I'm separated. You bought your funeral dress for mediation. Erin turned. How do you know that? The tag was in my wastebasket after you changed here. You went through the trash? I threw away a tissue. I was going to tell you. When? When there was something to tell. There is a lawyer, an empty ring finger, an address designed to make you look calm while discussing property. That seems like something. Erin leaned against the counter. Derek and I have been living separately since January. I know. Did Martin know? No. Why didn't you tell him? Because he was trying to stay alive. Because you asked me not to bring stress into the house. Because every conversation became his medication, his appointments, his oxygen level. Her voice did not rise. That made the indictment harder to avoid. Helen opened the freezer and removed the top lasagna. Take this one. It has spinach. Mom, what do you want me to say? That you didn't know? I knew you were unhappy. You didn't ask. No. Erin looked down at the foil pan in Helen's hands. He would have asked Derek what he did wrong. He would have asked whether your furnace had been serviced. That's not asking. It was for him. And that was always enough for you. No, Helen said. It was what I had. The words remained between them. Helen set the lasagna on the counter. I'm sorry I didn't ask. Erin's face tightened. I didn't come here to make you apologize. Then why did you come? To bring the picture? You could have mailed it. I wanted to see you. The simple answer disarmed them both. Helen took 2 plates from the cabinet and warmed chicken tetrazzini. They ate at the table where Warren had mentioned the cottage after the funeral. Erin looked at the bags near the door. How long are you planning to stay? I added a second lunch day. A second what? Helen explained the cardboard sign, the 10 portions, and the Tuesday customers. She made it sound less satisfying than it had been. You're selling food out of the cottage? I'm feeding people twice a week, for money. Money has been involved. Do you need a permit? I'm looking into it. That part was true. Denise had brought county forms and a list of rules for small food operations. Helen could prepare limited meals by pre-order, but the kitchen needed a better thermometer, separate storage, and a hand-washing setup that did not produce orange water. Erin rubbed her forehead. You have been there 9 days. I have always cooked. For us. For people who appeared near food. You can't stand all day. I make 10 lunches, not feed a convention. You hurt yourself moving an air conditioner. I will not serve air conditioners. Erin almost smiled. What happens when you get tired? I stop. You don't stop. That was before. Before what? Helen's fork rested against the plate. Before there was no one left to keep alive. Before a cottage filled with Martin's neglected tasks had forced her to distinguish care from surrender. Before $5 for soup felt more honest than gratitude. Before I made the hours, she said. Erin studied her face. You like it there. I like parts. The lake, sometimes. The people, some of them. The cottage, let's not rush. Erin pushed tetrazzini around her plate. What about this house? I may sell. Her daughter looked up sharply. I said may. Janice can come tomorrow. No, you just said, I said I may sell. I did not say you may resume command. Erin put down her fork. Then call someone else. I might call Janice. She did nothing wrong. What are you waiting for? To decide what I want after it sells. The senior place has an opening in June. I'm not moving there. You haven't even toured it. I don't want to live 12 minutes from you so you can time my silences. That isn't why. It is partly why. Erin sat back. Helen softened her voice without surrendering the sentence. You want me safe because you love me. You also want me contained because you are frightened. Both can be true. That sounds like something Denise said. It does, unfortunately. Aaron looked toward the stairs. If you sell this house, where will you live? I have a cottage. You have a roof patch and 100 gallons of propane. 50. Mom, I don't know yet. Erin's chair scraped back. She carried both plates to the sink, rinsed them, and loaded the dishwasher. Helen let her. At the door, Erin lifted one duffel bag. I'll help you put these in the truck. I can carry bags. I know. She took it anyway. Helen carried the lighter one. In the garage, Erin set the bag behind the passenger seat. Her gaze fell on Martin's work gloves resting on the dashboard. You should clean those out, she said. Eventually, he left everything in here. He was planning to come back. The sentence stopped them. Erin reached through the open window and picked up one glove. It was stiff with dirt across the palm. She held it for a moment, then returned it to the dashboard in the same position. Call Janice yourself, she said. If you want the estimate, I will. And tell me when you come back to Milwaukee. I will. Not after you've arrived, before. Erin nodded. That's all I'm asking. It isn't all. No, she said, but it's what I'm asking today. Helen drove north with the new frame buckled into the passenger seat and the carving tools beneath it. At the cottage, she placed the photograph on the kitchen shelf above Martin's yellow pad. The walnut frame made it look more important than it had in the bedroom, but not more truthful. She opened the county food forms, read every line, and wrote a list of what compliance would cost. Then she called Janice. This is Helen Hale, she said. When the realtor answered, I canceled an appointment with you. Yes, Mrs. Hale. Again, I'm sorry about the misunderstanding. It wasn't your misunderstanding. Helen looked through the window at the lake. I'd like a market estimate, she said, but you'll arrange it with me. Janice arrived in low heels that clicked through the empty house. She was younger than Helen had expected, perhaps 50, with silver beginning at her temples and a navy folder tucked beneath one arm. She did not mention Erin until Helen did. My daughter tends to organize when she's afraid, Helen said. Janice looked up from the crack along the dining room ceiling. Many people do? Do you have children? 3 sisters. That wasn't my question. No, but it's the reason I understand. Helen liked her better after that. They moved from room to room while Janice made notes. The house needed paint. The kitchen counters were dated, the furnace was 11 years old, and buyers might object to the unfinished bathroom baseboards. They can object, Helen said. I've objected for a year, Janice smiled. You don't have to renovate. Clean, paint, finish small repairs. The market will decide the rest. The number she gave Helen was less than Erin's hopeful estimate and more than Helen had paid for the place 32 years earlier. After fees, taxes, moving, and the remaining home equity balance from Martin's medical expenses, it would leave enough to make choices, but not enough to stop making them carefully. Do you want me to prepare a listing agreement? Janice asked. Not yet. If you're concerned about timing, we could list next month. I'm concerned about knowing where I'm moving before strangers inspect my closets. That's reasonable. My daughter won't think so. Your daughter isn't signing. Janice closed the folder. Helen walked her to the door, then stood in the hallway after she left. Without furniture, the entry would look wide. The old marks on the wall where Erin's growth had been recorded were hidden behind a bookcase in the den. Martin had never painted over them, though Erin had been fully grown when he entered their lives, and none of the marks belonged to him. He had protected evidence of years he missed. Helen called Erin from the kitchen. She came, Helen said. How much? Hello to you, too. Sorry, hello. How much? Helen gave her the range. That's good. It's adequate. You can get a beautiful place with that. The senior community has 2-bedroom units, so you could have an office. I have never required an office. A guest room, then. I'm not moving there. Erin exhaled through her nose. Did you sign with Janice? No. Why not? Because I'm not ready. What are you waiting for? An estimate at the cottage. The silence changed. What estimate? To make it usable year-round. You said you might sell it. I might. No, you're pricing renovations. Pricing is how adults discover whether a thought is foolish. And if it is, I'll choose another thought. Mom, that cottage is a summer shack. The pipes will freeze. The windows leak. You said the water came out orange. I'm aware of its features. You turned down a perfectly reasonable listing plan so you can spend more money up there. I postponed a listing. I did not turn down a kidney. You always do this. Do what? Make every decision in a way that prevents anyone from helping you. Helen looked at the casseroles still occupying the freezer. That is an imaginative interpretation of my marriage. I'm not talking about Martin. You usually are. Aaron went quiet. Helen regretted the jab, but did not withdraw it. I'll call when I have the other estimate. You already know what you want. No, Helen said. I know what I don't want. That took me 68 years. Give me another week for the rest. The general contractor came to the cottage 2 days later. His name was Leonard Shaw, and unlike Gary, he wore no sunglasses. He spent nearly 3 hours measuring walls, testing outlets, opening access panels, and saying, in tones that ranged from thoughtful to expensive. Helen followed him with her yellow pad. To make it year-round, he said at the kitchen table. Insulation underneath. Windows, plumbing protection, electrical service upgrade, bathroom ventilation, exterior work. If you want to bring everything to modern finish, redo the kitchen, replace the flooring. I did not say modern finish. You asked for the complete number. I want the frightening number first. Leonard gave it to her. $94,000. Helen wrote it down, stared at it, and crossed out nothing. The structure isn't worth that, she said. The structure? No. Lake lot is where the value is. I'm not bulldozing it. I didn't suggest that. You thought it. I think many things. I only charge for the ones I build. She turned to a clean page. Now give me the number that keeps the pipes from freezing and me from dying of electrical fire. That estimate was $26,000, possibly $30 if the crawl space revealed problems. It included insulation, heat tape, and protected plumbing, a safer electrical panel, 2 replacement windows, and repairs to the bathroom ventilation. No new kitchen, no polished floors, no straight cabinets. Helen asked him to separate urgent work from work that could wait. Leonard promised a written estimate and left her with a business card. She placed it beside Janice's. 2 professionals, 2 properties, 2 prices, and no instruction for which life to choose. At Thursday lunch, Helen served beef stew and biscuits to 12 people because she had made the mistake of accepting 2 extra pre-orders. The county paperwork had been approved for limited meal service, and a new thermometer hung beside the stove. She kept receipts, recorded each sale, and made everyone wash their hands at a portable station Noah had helped assemble outside. You're enjoying this too much, Wes said as she checked the stew temperature. I enjoy not poisoning you. Denise says that too, but her tone is different. Carla paid for 2 lunches and carried 1 back to the marina. Gary ate standing at the porch rail. Noah arrived late from the lake, wind-reddened and hungry, and washed his bowl after Helen announced the kitchen closed at 1:30. At 1:40, a man knocked. Helen pointed to the folded cardboard sign. Closed, I ordered. What name? Mike. She checked the list. You ordered Tuesday. I got busy. Your lunch was eaten Tuesday. By who? Not relevant. He looked wounded enough that Helen gave him a biscuit. She charged $2. When everyone left, she counted the money, subtracted ingredients, and wrote the small profit on the pad. It would not pay for winterization. It might cover utilities if she kept strict portions and resisted feeding every person who appeared with a sad expression. More important, the work had boundaries. Martin's care had spread across every hour. Lunch ended at 1:30. Helen closed the kitchen, took 2 pain relievers, and sat with her feet elevated. Her knees throbbed. Her shoulders felt used but not emptied. She called Aaron and gave her Leonard's numbers. $94,000, Aaron repeated, for everything. I'm not doing everything. $30,000 is still everything you should not spend. It's my money. I know it's your money. You say that like a technicality. I say it like someone who watched you spend 4 years worrying about every hospital bill. That's why I asked for separate priorities. What did the contractor say? Electrical panel first. Plumbing and underfloor insulation before cold weather. 2 windows, the bathroom fan. Where are you getting $30,000? I have some savings. The house, if I sell. If? When? Probably. Probably. Helen looked around the cottage. The late afternoon light made every worn surface visible. Scratched table, crooked cabinets, patched ceiling, old floorboards carrying pale tracks where chairs had moved over decades. I'm going to list the house, she said. Aaron did not answer. But I am not moving into the senior community. I will decide how much work to do here after I receive the written estimate. I'll keep enough from the house sale for my care. I will not spend all of it on this cottage. You're going to live there. I'm considering it. You already started a business. I sell stew twice a week. You moved your clothes. I brought clothes. You won't admit what you're doing until it becomes too inconvenient for anyone to stop you. Helen stood, though no one was there to see. Stop me? That isn't what I meant. It is exactly what you meant. I have to go. Aaron. The call ended. Rain began before dark. It struck the repaired roof and ran cleanly into the gutters. Wind shook the trees, and the lake disappeared behind a gray curtain. Helen secured the porch chairs, checked the bathroom window, and put a towel beneath the back door where water seeped along the threshold. At 8, headlights cut through the rain. A car turned into the drive too fast and stopped crooked beside Martin's truck. Helen opened the door before Aaron reached the porch. Her daughter ran through the rain without a coat, holding her purse over her head. Her green sweater was soaked at the shoulders, and mud splashed the legs of her black pants. "Are you insane?" Helen shouted over the wind. "I could ask you the same thing." Aaron climbed the porch. Water ran from her hair onto her face. "You drove all this way in a storm? You stopped answering your phone. It's charging. I called 6 times. I told you the signal fails in weather. You said you were selling the house. I am, and putting the money into this. I told you I would keep enough for my care. How much is enough? That's my decision." Aaron stepped inside and looked around as if the cottage had personally deceived her. The new thermometer, stacked lunch containers, and county certificate were visible in the kitchen. Martin's photograph stood above the yellow pad. "You did all this in 2 weeks. I made repairs. You built a life before his grave has grass." Helen closed the door against the rain. The kitchen seemed smaller with both of them in it. "What did you expect me to do?" she asked. "Sit in that house and wait until you chose a brochure? I expected you to grieve. This is grief. No. This is you finding another broken thing that needs you." Aaron's wet hands curled at her sides. Helen looked at her daughter and understood that the storm had not driven her there. Fear had. But fear had entered Helen's life wearing Martin's face for 4 years, and she was tired of obeying it. "You didn't come to check whether I'm safe," she said. "You came to make me stop." Aaron's chin lifted. "Yes," she said. "I did." Helen took a towel from the hook and held it out. Aaron did not accept it. "You're dripping on my floor," Helen said. "Your floor?" "Yes." The word struck both of them. Rain battered the kitchen window. Water traced the edge of Aaron's jaw and dropped from her chin. She took the towel at last and pressed it to her hair. "You've been here 2 weeks, and the floor was here before me. Both things can be true. Do you hear yourself? Constantly. It's one of the inconveniences of living alone." Aaron threw the towel onto the back of a chair. "I am not trying to take your life away. You arranged a place for me to live and a person to sell my house. Now you drove through a storm to stop me from making this place usable. What portion of my life have you left for me to decide? The portion where you stay alive." Helen laughed once. "There it is." "What?" "The gentle little prison, every door locked for my safety." "That's dramatic. You came here in a thunderstorm because I missed 6 calls. You're 68 years old, alone in a cottage with bad wiring. The wiring is being replaced, which proves my point. No, it proves I listened to an electrician." A gust pressed against the cottage and the lights flickered. Aaron looked at the ceiling. Helen said, "Don't." "I didn't say anything." "Your face did." "My face noticed the electricity." "Your face has been noticing my incompetence for 2 weeks. I don't think you're incompetent. You think competence expired at the funeral." Aaron picked up the towel again and rubbed her hair with both hands. Beneath anger, she looked exhausted. There were shadows beneath her eyes, and the green sweater clung to her shoulders. Helen went to the stove. "What are you doing?" "Heating stew. I'm not hungry." "You drove 2 hours after work. I wasn't at work. Then you drove 2 hours in a storm on an empty stomach recreationally." Helen turned on the burner beneath the leftover stew. The blue flame caught on the second click. Behind her, Aaron said, "Derek wants the condo sold." Helen kept her hand on the stove knob. "He can't want it sold by himself." He filed a motion. The language sounded borrowed from a lawyer, which meant Aaron had been living with it long enough to make it ordinary. "Why?" Helen asked. "He wants his share of the equity? I thought the condo was yours before the marriage." "It was. Then we refinanced. His name went on the loan. He paid toward it for 6 years. How much does he want? 40,000. Helen turned. Aaron looked toward the rain-dark window. It might settle for less. My attorney thinks 30. And you need to refinance to pay him. Yes. Can you? Maybe. Interest rates are terrible, and I still have the hospital loan from nursing school. You paid that off. I paid off the federal part, not all of it. Helen stirred the stew, although it did not need stirring. Martin had made the final payment on Aaron's nursing degree. That was how Helen had always remembered it. In truth, he had paid one private loan when the interest jumped, and the story had expanded through repetition until his help became completion. Practical love did that. It grew cleaner in memory than it had been in life. Why didn't you tell me? Helen asked. Aaron gave her a tired look. You were busy with Martin. Yes, you could have asked for help. I didn't want your money, didn't? Aaron's eyes hardened. Don't. You pushed me to sell the house before he was buried. For you. Not entirely. For you, Aaron repeated, louder. I thought if you sold, you'd be safe. I thought you'd have money where you could use it instead of trapped in a house you can't manage. And yes, maybe I thought if I came up short, you might loan me something. I didn't make a plan. I didn't calculate your death. I thought my mother might help me not lose my home. Helen lowered the burner. How much were you going to ask? I wasn't. That is not an answer. I don't know. 10,000, 15, a loan. Could you repay it? Eventually. On top of the refinance. Forget I said anything. I won't. Of course not. Now every time I object to this place, you can say I'm after your money. I didn't say that. You thought it. No. I thought you were frightened and exhausted and trying to solve both our lives with one house sale. Erin crossed her arms over the wet sweater. That sounds like something your new friend said. It sounds like something I learned from you. The stew began to bubble. Helen turned off the flame and filled 2 bowls. Erin did not sit. Helen placed one bowl at the opposite side of the table. Your mother can care about your divorce and still refuse to finance it. I didn't ask. I know, I'm answering before you turn the question into another brochure. Erin flinched. The satisfaction Helen expected did not come. I will sell the house, Helen said. I will use a limited amount to winterize this cottage. The electrical work, the plumbing, insulation, 2 windows. Not a new kitchen, not polished floors, not $94,000. You've decided. Yes. Since this afternoon? Since before you arrived. Saying it aloud is the new part. And the rest of the house money? I'll keep it for taxes, medical care, help here if I need it, and whatever life turns out to cost. You mean whatever these people convince you it costs? These people? The mechanic, the postal carrier, Noah. People you barely know, who appear every time food comes out. Helen stared at her. They paid for the food. That isn't what I mean. I know. Martin spent years coming up here for them. He bought parts, fixed engines, sat at that marina pretending he was fine while you were home arranging his pills. Now you're doing the same thing. You're feeding them, hiring them, letting them tell you this wreck is a life. No one told me. They didn't have to. Helen gripped the back of a chair. Do you think I don't know what they got from him? Erin stopped. They got the man who could lift an engine part. They got the man with answers. The man who arrived with tools and left before anyone watched him struggle to get out of a chair. Helen's voice shook, but she did not lower it. I got the man who woke at 2 a.m, unable to breathe. I got the bathroom floor. I got the pill he spat into a napkin because he was tired of swallowing. I got every fear he refused to show anyone else. And then he came here and told strangers I made good trout. Erin's anger shifted, losing its shape. Helen pulled out the chair and sat because her knees had begun to tremble. Do you know what Wes said? Martin liked having somewhere people didn't watch him breathe. Mom. I watched him because somebody had to. I know. I watched him so hard he couldn't stand being seen. The rain filled the silence. Helen looked at the bowl between her hands. A thin layer of fat had gathered around the edge. I loved him, she said, and sometimes I controlled every inch of air around him because I was terrified. I called it care because it was care. It was also control. Erin sat across from her. Neither touched the stew. Helen continued more quietly. He should have told me the truth. He should have told those people he was sick. He should have come home when he was tired, instead of making me guess what condition he'd return in. I am not turning him into a saint because he died. Then why keep his cottage? I'm not keeping it for him. Erin looked around the kitchen. If this place had to remain Martin's exactly as he left it, I would burn the legal pad and sell it tomorrow, Helen said. I fixed the roof because I wanted to stay dry. I fixed the porch because I wanted to sit outside. I'm doing lunches because I like feeding 10 people and telling the 11th no. 12, Aaron said. What? You told me 12 on the phone. 12 was an error in judgment. A reluctant breath escaped Aaron that might have been a laugh. Helen pushed the bowl toward her. I'm keeping the cottage for me. You hate it. I hated what it took from us. It took him from us. No. Martin took himself here. Aaron's gaze moved to the photograph above the pad. He always chose it, she said. Not always. When it mattered. Helen heard something underneath the words. Not the funeral. Not the years of Thursday drives. Something narrower and older. When? She asked. Aaron's face closed. Tell me. It doesn't matter now. It matters enough to make you reject the place, before Warren finished his sentence. I didn't want it. Why was Martin specific about you? You think I know? He must have said something. No. Aaron. Her daughter stood so abruptly the table moved. Stew lapped against the bowls. When my marriage to Paul fell apart, I called him, she said. Helen remembered Paul as a handsome man, with elaborate apologies and no ability to keep a job. The marriage lasted 11 months. From where? Helen asked. A motel off the interstate. You called us? I called Martin. You were with Aunt Judy after her surgery. Helen searched her memory. She had spent 4 nights in Madison. When she returned, Aaron was sleeping on their couch, and Martin was changing the locks on her apartment. He came, Helen said. The next morning. What happened that night? I asked him to come get me. He said the cottage roof had torn loose in a storm, and he couldn't leave until daylight. Helen looked up at the repaired patch above the kitchen. He left you there? He told me to lock the door and call the front desk if Paul showed up. Then he came at 6, packed my apartment, fixed everything. But not that night. No, Helen had never known. Aaron wiped beneath one eye with the heel of her hand, angry at the rainwater or tears, whichever remained. This place was always first, she said. Even when he came afterward and did everything right, it was first. Helen had no defense to offer. That was wrong, she said. Aaron's shoulders stiffened, as if she had expected argument and prepared herself against it. He should have come, Helen said. The roof could have waited. He said it couldn't. He was wrong. The simple judgment seemed to hurt Aaron more than an excuse would have. She sat again. Helen reached across the table, then stopped before touching her. Aaron noticed the unfinished gesture. After a moment, she put her hand where Helen could reach it. They ate the stew lukewarm. The storm made driving impossible, so Aaron stayed in the narrow bedroom while Helen took the couch. Before bed, Aaron checked the heater cord, the back door leak, and every window latch. Helen let her check. In the morning, the lake was bright and violent beneath a clean sky. Branches covered the drive. One had fallen against Aaron's sedan without damaging it. They cleared the smaller limbs together. For the largest, Helen called Wes. Aaron did not object. While they waited, she stood in the unfinished kitchen holding one of Martin's carving knives. Helen had unrolled the set on the counter. This one is dull, Aaron said. He missed last Christmas. Aaron tested the edge carefully with her thumb. I know how to sharpen it. He showed you? He showed me wrong 3 times. Then I watched a video. That sounds like him? Aaron wrapped the knife again. At the door, before leaving, she said, I still think living here is a bad idea. You're allowed. I still think you should tour the senior place. No. You answered too fast. I practiced. Aaron looked toward the lake. If you list the house, tell me before the sign goes up. I will, and don't loan Noah any more money. I have not loaned Noah money. Good. Honey? Aaron turned. I'm not paying Derek $30,000. I know. I can help you look at your options. That sounds unbearable. It probably will be. Aaron nodded. All right. She stepped from the porch, then came back and tightened Helen's scarf without asking. Helen allowed that too. After the sedan disappeared, she returned to the kitchen and took Martin's legal pad from beneath the photograph. On a clean page, she wrote List House. Below it, she wrote Keep Cottage. The words frightened her. She left them there. Janice put the sign in the yard on a Monday morning. Helen watched from the living room window while the metal stake went into the grass where Martin used to complain. Nothing grew evenly. A red panel beneath Janice's name read, For Sale. It looked less dramatic than Helen expected. No thunder. No neighbor running across the street in alarm. Linda Carver opened her front door, saw the sign, and came over carrying a container Helen had returned twice. "Brownies," Linda said. "You're supposed to take your dishes back empty." "I did. Then I refilled it." Linda looked toward the sign. "You're really going?" "Yes." "Erin said you might." Helen turned. "When did you speak to Erin?" "She called about your truck the first morning." "Of course she did. She worries. So does mold. It spreads into everything." Linda tried not to smile. "Where are you moving?" "The cottage? The fishing place?" "I'm attempting to remove the fish from its identity." Linda hugged her, container trapped between them. "Good for you." Helen accepted the hug, but distrusted the phrase. "Good for you" was what people said, when a decision sounded either brave or foolish, and they lacked the information to choose. The first offer came below Janice's range and requested the dining room chandelier, which Helen had not realized anyone valued. She refused it. Erin called that evening. "Why did you turn it down? Do realtors now issue alerts directly to adult daughters?" "You told me." Helen remembered mentioning the number in a message. It was too low. It was only 8,000 under the bottom of the range. It was 12, after the furnace credit. The furnace works. It's 11 years old. "So, are half the furnaces in Wisconsin?" "Mom, if you lose a buyer over 12,000, then I lose a buyer." Erin was quiet. Helen pictured her looking at mortgage calculators on her laptop, translating every number into the condo she might have to surrender. "I'm not holding out for a fortune," Helen said. "Janice agrees it was low." "Okay. Just okay? I'm practicing." Helen smiled. "It needs work." The second offer arrived 4 days later. It was within the range, but the inspection found moisture near the garage foundation and a small crack in the heat exchanger. The buyers requested credits. Helen negotiated through Janice, not Erin. The final number was ordinary, adequate, and less impressive each time fees were subtracted. She accepted. Then the house began dismantling itself into decisions: keep, sell, donate, trash. Martin's life filled more boxes than Helen's because he had considered all hardware potentially useful. She found screws in the laundry room, drill bits in his sock drawer, and a jar of washers behind the cookbooks. Erin came on her days off. They worked in separate rooms at first. From the den, Helen heard the bookcase scrape across the floor. When she entered, Erin stood before the pencil marks hidden on the wall. Helen, 11. Helen, 14. Erin, 6. Erin, 12. The marks recorded Helen's childhood and Erin's, made by Helen's father before the house belonged to Helen. Martin had built the bookcase around that section rather than cover it. "I forgot these were here," Erin said. "I didn't." "What happens when the buyers paint? They paint." Erin touched the line beside her name at 12. "We could cut out the drywall and give them a hole. We'd patch it. Then we would own a rectangle of marked drywall. You kept Martin's broken tackle bag. I have not decided about the tackle bag. That means you kept it." Helen found a utility knife in Martin's workbench and scored a narrow piece of wallpaper beside the marks. She peeled it free carefully. The paper was printed with tiny blue flowers and carried one pencil line where Erin's height at 18 had crossed the seam. She handed the strip to her daughter. "This is less insane than drywall," she said. Erin folded it into tissue paper. They kept Martin's carving knives, one flannel shirt for Helen, the old wind-up clock, and a framed photograph from their 20th anniversary. Erin took his socket set after confirming it was not Wes's. His slippers went into the trash. Helen held them over the bag for a long time before dropping them. The work gloves remained on the truck dashboard. At the cottage, Leonard's crew opened the crawl space and found 2 damaged joists. The extra repair added $2,300. Helen sat with Leonard at the kitchen table, her glasses low on her nose, and made him explain every line. "We can delay the second window," she said. "You'll lose heat there. I have curtains. Curtains aren't insulation. They are cheaper than glass." He agreed to repair the joists, replace the electrical panel, insulate the floor, protect the pipes, and install the safer bathroom ventilation. The second window stayed on the list for spring. Helen paid deposits from the house proceeds after closing. The remainder went into separate accounts: living expenses, property taxes, and a reserve for future care. Erin was present when Helen met with the bank advisor, but did not speak unless asked. Afterward, in the parking lot, she said, "You kept more than I thought. You thought I would spend $94,000 on crooked cabinets. I didn't know. I told you. I'm adjusting to believing you. That must be exhausting. It is. Erin had decided to sell the condo rather than refinance at the higher rate. She would rent for a year, pay Derek his negotiated share, and keep what remained. I found a smaller place near the hospital, she told Helen. The lender said I could buy if I had a co-signer. Helen looked at her over the roof of the truck. I'm not asking, Erin added quickly. Good. I knew you'd say no. You're 42 years old with a full-time job. Co-signing would make us both nervous and unpleasant. We're already nervous and unpleasant. We would become professionals. Erin laughed. I signed a lease. Do you like it? No. Excellent start. It has good light. That helps. Helen paid for movers for herself, not for Erin. She offered her daughter Martin's dining table, and Erin took it after measuring her rental twice. In return, Erin helped Helen pack the cottage kitchen, while Leonard's crew worked around them. The crooked cabinet door above the sink came off in Erin's hand. I barely touched it. Helen looked up from a box of dishes. That was Martin's position on most damage. Erin examined the stripped screw holes. Do you have toothpicks? In the second drawer. Wood glue? Tool roll. She repaired the holes, tightened the hinge, and rehung the door. It remained slightly crooked but no longer open by itself. Helen tested it. You missed your calling. I have a calling. It involves people who ignore medical advice. Very transferable. The lunches stopped during the electrical work. Helen refused to cook around dust and exposed wires, even when Wes offered to bring a generator. When she reopened, she limited orders to 10. 14 names appeared on the sheet. Helen crossed out the last 4. Noah protested because one was his. You wrote your name at 9 this morning for noon lunch, she said. I was on the lake. The lake does not exempt you from clocks. Martin said you were generous. Martin is no longer managing policy. Noah bought a biscuit for $2 and ate half of Wes's sandwich. Through summer, the cottage changed in ways that were more practical than beautiful. The bathroom fans stopped shrieking. The outlets no longer sparked when the refrigerator cycled. The pipes held clear water after a new filter was installed, though Helen still drank bottled water until the test results returned. She put the couch on the porch with a free sign. Nobody took it, Denise added, or best offer. Still, nobody took it. Wes hauled it to the dump after Helen agreed to pay the fee. She bought a second-hand couch from a woman in town and discovered it was 1 inch too wide for the door. Noah removed the front legs. Denise supervised. Helen cooked nobody lunch until the couch was inside. The marina lunches covered groceries and part of the monthly utilities. They did not become a restaurant. Helen closed at 1:30. She took Wednesdays off from repairs, lists, and anyone who arrived holding a tool. Some Wednesdays, she and Denise walked the road. Helen's distance improved, but her knees still required ice afterward. She bought proper boots and a folding walking stick, then resented how useful it was. Erin visited twice without inspecting the outlets. On the third visit, she brought Martin's old fishing pole. Helen recognized it by the cork handle and the strip of red tape near the reel. Where was that? My storage locker. You kept it. I kept a pole. You rejected a cottage, not every object he touched. That's your line. I've been saving it. Erin set the pole against the porch wall. He shortened it for me. When? When I was 19. The original handle kept catching under my arm. Helen remembered Martin in the shed, cutting something while refusing to explain why. He had been in their family less than a year then, still cautious about offering Erin anything she might mistake for authority. Do you want to fish? Helen asked. No. Good. I don't either. The pole stayed beside the porch for a month. By late September, the tourist traffic thinned. Noah's charters became weather-dependent. The mornings came cold enough for Helen to see her breath above the coffee. Martin's aluminum boat had been inspected, patched, and declared ugly but safe. Wes replaced the trailer tires and fuel line. Helen paid him, though he charged less than she suspected he should. She took the boat out once with Noah beside her, learning the motor and discovering that steering was less intuitive than Martin had claimed. She wore her life jacket, stayed close to shore, and returned after 20 minutes with shaking hands. She did not tell Erin about that trip until afterward. Erin reacted as expected. Then, unexpectedly, she asked, Did you go to his place? What place? Where he used to fish. He used several. The one past the point. Near the old concrete marker. Helen knew it. Martin had called it the shelf. A drop in the lake bottom where trout moved when the water cooled. No. Erin looked toward the aluminum boat beneath its cover. The morning was clear, but cold. Noah was at the marina preparing for one of his final charters of the season. Wes had already checked the weather and declared the lake manageable before noon. "Could you show me?" Aaron asked. Helen studied her daughter's face. "Today? If it's safe?" It was not an apology. It was not forgiveness. It was a request narrow enough for both of them to enter. Helen called Noah and asked him to stay within sight. Then she brought 2 life jackets from the shed and handed Aaron the orange one. Aaron held the life jacket at arm's length. "Why is it still orange? So rescuers can find you." "I meant, why do I have the same one?" "You recognized it." "I recognized it as the object that tried to suffocate me in 1996. Helen tightened the straps before Aaron could object. The jacket was not actually the same one. The old foam had hardened years ago. Martin had replaced it with an equally enormous model because subtlety had never entered his safety decisions. "You should be able to breathe," Helen said. "I could breathe before you tightened it. You can breathe now, with focus." They backed the boat down the county ramp in silence, except for Helen's instructions. Aaron held the bowline while Helen parked the truck. Noah's charter boat waited beyond the breakwater, its white hull lifting gently on the swells. He raised a hand when they cleared the ramp. Helen started the outboard. It coughed once, then settled into a rough hum. "You've done this before?" Aaron asked. "Yes." "How many times?" Helen shifted into forward. "Enough to know where forward is." That was not a number. "Now you understand how I felt around Martin. The harbor protected them until they passed the breakwater. Beyond it, the lake moved in long, dark folds." Helen reduced speed. The aluminum hull slapped the first wave hard enough to make Aaron grab the side. "Manageable," she called over the motor. That was Wes's word. Wes has a marina. He profits when boats survive mistakes. Helen adjusted their angle to the waves. "We can turn back." Aaron looked toward the low point of land ahead. The old concrete marker stood above the trees, stained white by birds and weather. "No," she said. "Keep going." The cold found every gap in Helen's coat. Spray darkened her gloves. She kept both hands steady and followed the shoreline, remembering Martin's instructions despite years of pretending not to listen. Never fight the bow. Give it enough power to answer. Watch the water farther ahead than feels natural. Noah remained behind and to their right. He made no attempt to come closer. When they reached the point, Helen slowed the motor. The shelf lay beyond the concrete marker where the water deepened abruptly. Martin had shown it to her during their first summer of marriage. He described currents, temperature, and fish movement until Helen asked whether he had brought her there to spend time together or conduct a seminar. He had kissed her instead of answering. "This is it," Helen said. Aaron watched the dark water. "How can you tell? The marker lines up with that split pine. They all look split. That one looks judgmental." "Ah, a family tree." Helen shut off the motor. The sudden quiet seemed larger than silence on land. Water tapped the hull. The boat drifted slowly while Noah idled at a distance. Aaron rested her hands between her knees. "Did he bring you here often?" she asked. "Not after I complained about fish slime on my shoes." "You complained once?" "Repeatedly." "He still talked like you loved this place." He heard selectively. Aaron looked toward the shore. "He did that." "Yes." The orange jacket rose around her neck when she hunched forward, making her appear 19 again. Helen resisted the urge to straighten it. Aaron said, "When I called him from the motel, Paul had punched a hole in the bathroom door." Helen went still. "He didn't hit me. I told you that then, and it was true. But he'd been drinking. I locked myself in the bathroom, and he put his fist through the door because I wouldn't come out. Why didn't you tell me? You were in Madison. Aunt Judy had just had surgery and you were already upset. You could have called." "I called Martin." The boat turned gradually with the current. Helen could no longer see the concrete marker without looking over her shoulder. "What did you say to him?" she asked. "I told him I was scared. I asked him to come get me." "And he said the roof." "First he asked whether Paul knew where I was. Then he told me to push the dresser against the motel door and call the front desk. He stayed on the phone while I moved it." Aaron rubbed one thumb across the other. "He said the road up here had trees down and part of the roof was loose. He said if he left in the storm, he might not get through anyway. He promised he'd be there at daylight." Helen closed her eyes briefly. "That's different from not coming because he preferred the cottage," she said. "I know, but it was still wrong." Aaron looked at her. "He should have tried," Helen said, "or called someone closer. or told you he was coming even if it took all night. He should not have made you spend those hours wondering whether a roof mattered more. I knew you'd explain it. I did explain it. You didn't excuse it. No. Aaron's face crumpled with such speed that Helen nearly reached for her. Instead, she waited. I hated him for it, Aaron said. Then he showed up at 6:12 with coffee and that red crowbar he kept under the truck seat. He packed everything I owned into garbage bags. He changed my locks even though I told him I wasn't going back. He slept on the couch for 2 weeks because he said Paul might come by. I remember, I wanted him to apologize for the motel. He kept fixing things instead. That was the only apology he trusted. It wasn't enough. No. Erin wiped her face with the sleeve of her coat. Then why does it feel terrible to say that? Because he loved you. That should make it easier. It almost never does. The lake lifted them and set them down. Helen looked toward Noah. He had turned his boat away, giving them the privacy of his back without leaving them alone. Martin came into your life late, she said. He was terrified of asking for a place he hadn't earned. He never told you to call him Dad. I wouldn't have. I know. He knew too. He told people at the marina I was his daughter. He told everyone that. He didn't tell me. Helen smiled sadly. He probably thought fixing your locks covered it. Erin pulled the jacket away from her chin. Why did he want me to have the cottage? I don't know. You must have some idea. I have many ideas. None came from him. Warren said he was specific. He was specific about giving you first choice. That isn't the same as insisting you keep it. Erin watched a gull skim low over the water. Maybe he knew I'd say no. Maybe. That sounds like him. Arrange the rejection before it can surprise him. Also sounds like you. Erin glanced over, offended for half a second. Then she laughed. The sound traveled over the water. Helen started the motor before the boat drifted beyond the point. On the return, Erin asked to steer. Helen moved aside, but kept one hand near the throttle. You're hovering, Erin said. Yes. You just gave a speech about control. I gave no speech. Also, this is a boat. Erin held the wheel too rigidly. Helen showed her how to let the bow answer the water. They made it to the harbor without hitting anything, which Helen considered an excellent shared standard. At the ramp, Noah helped steady the boat while Erin stepped onto the dock. How was the shelf? He asked. Judgmental, Erin said. Noah nodded. Usually is. They hauled the boat onto the trailer. Helen's arms tired before the winch locked, and she handed the handle to Erin without pretending she had only paused. Erin finished the job. On the drive back, Martin's gloves slid across the dashboard at the first curve. Erin caught them before they fell. She held one in her lap. You keeping that? Helen asked. Maybe. Take both. A single glove is depressing. They're filthy. They are honest. Erin placed them in her purse. Winter arrived before Helen felt ready. The first freeze exposed a fault in the new heat tape under the kitchen pipes. The water slowed to a thread at 7 in the morning. Helen shut off the pump, called Leonard, and spent 2 hours with a hairdryer, aimed into an open cabinet while wearing her coat indoors. Nothing burst. Leonard replaced a failed connection at no charge. Helen wrote the incident on her maintenance list anyway. She canceled lunch that day. Wes protested by text. Helen answered that frozen plumbing did not become soup merely because he was hungry. She closed the cottage for 3 days in January when the forecast dropped below 0, and stayed with Erin in the smaller rental. The apartment had good light, as promised, and a kitchen table too large for the room. Martin's dining table. Helen took the couch. Erin complained that she should have the bed. Helen refused. They argued for 8 minutes, then slept where they had intended. In the morning, Erin left for work before dawn. On the table she had placed a banana, Helen's medication, and a note that said, "Eat both," which was medically confusing, but emotionally clear. Helen returned to the cottage after the cold broke. The place required work through every season. Snow gathered against the back door. The electric bill in February made her call the utility company and request an explanation. She learned which windows needed plastic film and where ice formed on the porch steps. She also learned the shape of Winter Lake's silence. Denise walked less, but came for coffee. Wes appeared with excuses involving the boat battery. Noah used the kitchen table to repair reels during weeks when charters stopped. Helen charged for lunch on Tuesdays and Thursdays, even when only 4 people ordered. She did not feed everyone merely because they entered. When Erin's divorce became final, she came to the cottage with a bottle of grocery store champagne. Helen made pot roast. They did not toast to freedom or failure. Erin raised her glass and said, "To paperwork ending." Helen answered, "May it remain ended." By spring, the second window was still on the list. So were the shed roof, the boat trailer lights, and repainting the bathroom. The cottage had not become finished. It had become inhabited. On the first warm Thursday, Helen opened the porch for lunch. Wes arrived early and tried to reserve the chair nearest the railing with his cap. Denise moved it. Carla brought exact change. Noah brought too many people and was made to eat on the step. Erin came carrying a cordless drill. "I'm not paying you in soup," Helen said. "I ate before I came." "Why?" "Because you say that every time." Erin went to the kitchen and opened the cabinet above the sink. The door sagged again. "I fixed this." "You improved it temporarily." "The screws are too small." "Martin bought screws by weight. There are jars in the shed. None of them are right. Now you understand marriage." Erin found a longer screw in Martin's tool roll, filled the stripped hole with wood glue and toothpicks, and reset the hinge. She worked while Helen poured coffee on the porch. Above the front door hung a weathered board Wes had found in the marina's storage room during winter. Martin had painted the words years earlier in uneven black letters. "Leave something ready for the next person." Wes said the sign used to hang above the cottage sink before Martin took it down to repaint the wall. Helen did not remember it. The wall had never been repainted. She had cleaned the board, but left the chip paint alone. At 1:30, Helen folded the cardboard lunch sign. Noah lifted his empty bowl. "Coffee refill?" "We're closed. Coffee isn't lunch. It occupies a cup I have to wash." He carried the cup into the kitchen and washed it himself. Erin shut the repaired cabinet. It stayed closed. "Look," she said, "I'm looking. Straight. Nearly. Can you ever just approve something? It would damage your character." Erin gave her Martin's nickel smile. Outside, chairs scraped and people began carrying bowls in without being asked. Denise wrapped leftover biscuits. Wes checked the porch step he had repaired nearly a year earlier and announced it was still level, as though surprised by his own work. Helen poured herself the final cup of coffee. Someone called her name from the kitchen. Someone else asked where the clean towels belonged. Erin opened the wrong drawer and accused Helen of reorganizing. Helen sat in the chair nearest the railing and looked at the lake. She finished her coffee before answering any of them.